Holding my hand in the darkness, seeing ghosts down the hallway. There's a presence, bedroom shadows, cloaked and haunting me. Cold hand touching me, fear overwhelming me. Tapping at my window, I can't bear to open my eyes. A breath on my neck, floating apparitions everywhere. Go to sleep with the light on, I wake up paralyzed. Ghostly apparition hovering over me, asking what it wants to know. I'm shaking now, it calls out my name. Cloaked and haunting me, cold hand touching me, fear overwhelming me. Tapping at my window, I can't bear to open my eyes. A breath on my neck, floating apparitions everywhere. Go to sleep with the light on, I wake up paralyzed.
Seeking power over those that oppose me. Unspeakable crime, murder at midnight. A deal I made, a life I had to take. Someone I loved once held so tight. The screens will follow me. Cries of my ancestors said, go away. My operation, fasting in brain, shape shifting. I feel the animal high inspired me. I feel the change. I feel the change coming. We are one but not the same. This form I desire, in innocent blood I will devour. Ancestors gathering round the dwelling, the spirit inhabiting, evil enveloping, the dancing graves in the night, the spirit occupying and transforming, stolen heights, dark practices, my secret life, feathered outers, mysticism, intriguing, my operation, fasting in brain, shape shifting. I feel the animal high inspired me. I feel the change. I feel the change coming. We are one but not the same. Give me the ability to hide in plain sight, so no one can see me, not even in the light. I am the crawler, I'm a within, I'm nobody's friend. This initiation is all part of the dark creation. My desires performing incantations. I walk in disguise. If I catch you, it's your demise. Shamanism, my religion, summoning spirits, manifesting myself and changing my flesh. A nightmare to behold. I'ma make you part of the fold. The skin of a man, the soul of a predator. The change is complete. This thing I become. my flesh has succumbed. My offering, fasting in grain, shape shifting. I feel the animal hiding against my name. I feel the change. I feel the change coming. We are one, but not the same.
A dreaded flag, a vengeful sea. Be careful what you say. There's always someone listening. The Dutchman tossed on the sea. I swore and the devil heard me. Now we're doomed to sail the seven seas for eternity. So yo-ho, let the ocean winds blow. The line forever we must hold. We sail through them, cursed and condemned. Yo-ho, let the ocean winds blow. A sinister grin across his face said, you'll be doomed to this place.
Oh, it was muted.
Yeah.
Well, you missed a great joke. I had it muted, man. I'm sitting over here talking. Well, welcome to Paranormal Roundtable. I'm your host, Josh Turner, and welcome to the real reality. Elmer Fudd. That's my impression of him. So, this hat's pretty cool. Dude, I bought this hat a long time ago, and I knew I had some Bugs Bunnies. And on the back, it's got Daffy Duck and Porky Pig. Isn't that neat? It was a limited edition hat. But it's got the Mandela effect on there. Because I'll tell you right now, it was spelled Toons. I'll tell you right now, that Tunes, why would it be a tune?
Yeah.
Like they were Looney Tunes. I don't know. I don't understand. I don't know why it would be a musical tune. That doesn't make any sense. You know, does it? Does it make
It's
sense?
funny that you're wearing that hat today, because I just read something that Christopher Lee and some other actor that he did a bunch of movies with, some English actor, I forget his name, but supposedly they got kicked out of theaters for laughing too hard at Looney Tunes. Like they would get too rowdy and laughing their asses off, and they'd just be asked to leave.
Wow, Christopher Lee.
Yeah.
Oh. Tell them who Christopher Lee is. They don't know, man.
I'm sure they know, because it's not before their time. But
Well, there's a lot of people probably don't know.
Well, Christopher Lee is a very famous actor.
Oh, yeah.
He played Dracula, and then he played.
It was Tarkin, wasn't it?
Huh?
Wasn't that him?
No, he wasn't Tarkin.
I'm sorry,
Count Dooku.
Dooku and
Yeah.
Saruman.
Yeah, he was
Saruman.
Saruman in Lord of the Rings.
Yeah, sorry.
Yeah.
Yeah, he was Saruman. He talked like this. He's like, I was laughing at the Looney Tunes. They were hilarious.
It's just funny because both of them are like these two English gentlemen, and they're just.
Who is the other guy?
Hang on, let me look him up. I forget.
Can you imagine being the usher? Excuse me, sir, but you are laughing too hard and too loud. It's probably some, because back in the day when I was young,
Peter Cushing.
Peter Cushing,
Peter
there
Cushing
we go.
and Christopher Lee. Yeah, they would get kicked out of Looney Tunes screenings.
So who's the
together.
guy that played Tarkin? Who's that?
You know what? Yeah, isn't that Peter
I
Cushing?
thought it was
Peter Cushing. I'm pretty sure that's him.
him and Christopher Lee
He
just
played
hanging out,
Tarkin.
looking at the Looney Tunes.
Yeah.
This is better work, Vader. Wow. But all you gotta do is look up Moff Tarkin in Star Wars. You'll find him. Right there. But anyways, I can imagine Christopher Lee getting kicked out of a theater for laughing at Looney Tunes. It's just
yeah, because they're both like proper, educated, informed gentlemen. These English gentlemen, and then they're just like.
You probably don't remember this, but because I know the only ones that really act like that now are Alamo Drafthouse.
Yeah,
they're weird, dude. It's like these hipster leftists,
Yeah,
they'll go up there and be like, "Excuse me," always have the horn rim glasses and like you are loud. They won't say anything to you or Tony. They come come after me because I'm white.
No, yeah,
Whitey, you are being loud. Okay.
Yeah, they're afraid to approach
anybody of
minority.
They don't do that.
They don't mess with us, but they'll mess with you.
They come up and they tell me I'm being loud when y'all are talking.
Yeah.
Or my brother, because he's bald headed and he's real light skinned.
Which is actually kind of like a soft form of bigotry itself, because it's like, hey, white boss man, why don't you get your brownies under control over here?
The riff-raff under control.
Like these leftists, they don't even realize that they're parroting like these old soft.
Well,
bigotry.
they're the ones that want segregation. I mean, like
Yeah.
they want to be segregated or whatever. Like they want to be, but they want to have their cake and eat it too.
Yeah.
They don't want to live around these people, but they want to have
No.
the luxury of not living around homeless people and all the other problems that come with that, or illegals, and then go,
bums for thee, not for me.
You people need to do something about this.
Yeah.
It's getting ridiculous. It's funny. So I was watching this. I'm waiting for people to fill up in the chat there, guys. I was watching this thing with Dave Chappelle. And Dave Chappelle's like, they're like, you have not known. Now he talks about the Diddy parties. He's like, I never went to one. And he's like, I was never invited. It's a hell of a way to find out you're ugly. He's like, this guy's been accused of some horrendous things. When he talks.
Yeah.
Because I never got to go to a freak off. Like, I was too ugly. Funny, dude. You got to go check that out, dude. It's funny.
He probably was invited, but was just too scared or too smart, or a combination of both to go.
Can you imagine Dave Chappelle? Like P. Diddy comes up to him,
mouth hanging open all the time.
You want to come to my party? We say have a freak off, fool. Boy, you got to get up in there. You know what I'm saying? And then
you're going to come to my big fat wet ass butt party.
Dave Chappelle's over there like, I don't know, what is there going to be refreshments? He's probably hanging out with Lando Calrissian. What's his name?
Oh, what is that actor's name?
What is his name? I forgot. Golly.
Damn it. I want to say something Lee.
He used to do the King Cobra. King Cobra.
I thought that was like Colt 45.
No, he did the King Cobra too. It was King Cobra, and I think he did Colt 45, but it was King Cobra.
Was that Carl Winslow? No,
just look him up, man. Just they're trying to mess around, dude. I could see him hanging out with him. He was always like ladies' man, like I'm real hot. I'm a hot dude.
It was Billy D. Williams.
Billy D. Williams. So I heard a story that Billy D. Williams got mad at Lionel Richie because he wanted to be in Dancing on the Ceiling, but he couldn't. He didn't want to dance. He just wanted to stand there, and kind of be. And like Lionel Richie was like, well, "What are you gonna do? There's dancing on the ceiling," and he's like, "I don't do that." But he wanted to be like, but I can imagine like he's hanging. Dave Chappelle's hanging out with Billy D. Williams, right? He's like Billy D. Williams. He's got that jerry curl, real nice hair. He's like, "Look, sucker, if there's any freak offs, it's gonna be me, not you. Who are you? Who are you? A breakfast cereal? What is Puffy Combs? Are you a breakfast cereal? All right, sucker." Drink some King Cobra and put down the baby oil, for goodness sakes. What's wrong with you? I'm trying to rescue Han Solo. I made a mistake, all right? I was shooting craps and we lost him. That Millennium Falcon. Just see Puffy comes over there like, yeah, I'm so high I don't even know what's going on right now. Dave Chappelle, we won't be joining you this evening, sir. I've heard some very bad things about your parties. A lot of baby oil. A lot of baby oil. I don't even trust it. More oil than is in his hair. Get out of here. Get out. Go away. Shoot. Get out of here. Gross stuff you be doing at those parties. Big wet butts everywhere, just with sweat and oil. It's horrible. Beyonce and Jay-Z be up in there just doing all kinds of stuff. That's the only time he ever got invited. They're like, you don't remember that? I was hanging out with Billy D. Williams. We were drinking King Cobra. I was blackout drunk. Billy D calls him the next day. Oh, I got a major headache. I don't even know what's going on. Last night we got accosted by Sean Combs, the breakfast cereal dude. That's it. No more of this skit. It's ridiculous. Too much baby oil, slipping and sliding everywhere.
You're trying to put baby oil on my booty, man.
There's a bunch of people coming out now and talking about what he tried to slip them, give them some Mickeys.
Yeah, like if you watch like certain clips of them, like old clips of them, it's like that. There's telltale signs that like, yeah, there's something wrong with this dude.
There's one guy I was talking about, and I don't know if this is true. I don't want to get sued or whatever, but this guy was saying that he was on an airplane with this dude, man, and he had some person with him that looked like a slave or something. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
They were like not moving, and the person he was just like, don't say nothing. He had his head down, sunglasses, and everybody's like, is that P. Diddy? He's in first class, and he was like, I guess with somebody that was young,
Yeah.
And I heard this like way back in the day, though, a long time ago. Because I bodyguarded some rappers back in the day. Like I said, I don't want to say their names because they might be offended if I, say something that they said. But then I thought back on it when I was younger. I thought, man, these guys are probably, they're probably jealous because, Diddy is this big name and they're not. And now looking back on it, I'm like, yeah, he did that shit. That's
yeah.
Just, these guys were talking about it. And, we were all back in the day, we were just, thugs working security for these guys, and they were like, yeah, he did all this crap, man. And so I was told that, I heard this story about him. That's the only thing I've ever heard straight from somebody who saw it.
Yeah.
Everything else is just conjecture or whatever. And I was just standing there, kind of like this, like arms crossed, leaning on the stage, and these guys were talking away. And I was just like, it was the same night I met Rob Van Winkle, Vanilla Ice.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, and they had these other guys in there that were rapping. You're talking about old school guys.
Yeah.
And they were just talking. And one of my guys asked him about that. And he was like, is that true? Tell him the story. He's like, tell the story. It was like a bunch of us there. And that dude was like, man, he was like holding this kid hostage. Like on a plane.
Yeah.
It was weird. And nobody was questioning this because it was him. You know? And so that's the only story I've ever heard about the guy. And then, but the dude that was telling it was sipping on lean too.
Yeah.
I don't mean it's not true, but a few hours later he was like throwed, and you're just like, wow. Well, you go up to him and tell us that story about P. Diddy again. He's like, oh man, it was a dark and stormy night. He falls over and dies. They're like, oh, well, I can see you're busy dying, asphyxiating. We're going to go ahead and leave now because I don't want to be associated with this. But that was back in the day. Somebody fell over like that. They ain't your crew. It's like you were talking about. They're like, yeah, he ain't with me. I'm not taking him to the hospital and risking getting in trouble.
Yeah.
What is your relation to this person?
You're surrounded by people who
we were at a freak off together, sir. I'm going to do my mustache like this. The Raleigh fingers. I would put that because I got that beard wax when you use it. What do you think, folks?
Yeah, I was going to say you need a lot of wax for that.
Yes, well, so I rushed him to the hospital, and they were like, "Who is this man?" And I'm like, "He is a famous rap artist. Take good care of him, or don't. I don't care. It doesn't matter to me. Don't die on me now, old boy. I'll see you."
That boy makes me a lot of money. Now you make sure you take good care of him.
Take good care of him.
Bring him back in one piece. You gotta
He's
get him
one
back to
of
work
my
now.
recording artists. You're like, okay, and who are you? I am Mr. White. Mr. White, I run a honky tonk.
I am Mr. White.
Call me Master P. They're like, okay, Master P, who do you work for? You start asking all these questions. They love to do that.
Yeah.
Then they want to get to the bottom of who you are. What's going on here? That's like 911.
Yeah.
If you call them by accident, that's it. They're going to call you back. Somebody call 911.
Yeah.
You're like, yes, you would call back because I don't need you. So, hey, what's going on? Yeah, somebody called us. Somebody called this number. You definitely called this number. Where you at? Yeah. I'm like, I don't want to report anything. I'm good.
Well, we need a blood sample right now.
I hear ruckus in the background. What is going on over there? I was like, my wife's yelling at the dog. You just stop, please. We're good. There's no problems here. Okay, we're sending SWAT right now.
Yeah.
And the fire department and the EMS and the Surgeon General. They're all coming to your house right now. And the Jehovah's Witnesses. They'll all be there in 5 minutes. The next thing you know, you're like, we got 5 minutes, guys. Anything we got that's contraband, get rid of it. Damn, that's not even 5 minutes. What is that?
They just show up, blast your dog, and leave.
God, they walk up. They're like, is this dog dangerous? Is it dangerous? You're like, they're really just Decepticons.
Freaking schnauzer.
When did y'all get, Ed 209 in here? Why is he here? Why is that Soundwave? What is he doing here?
You have 10 seconds to comply.
He tells the K9 has been neutralized.
Yeah.
Threat mitigated. Like, you just shot my, whatever, my goldfish. Why? Howard never did anything to anybody. And he's gone. You're going to pay for this. Negatron walks in. You don't need a goldfish. Go find another one. I know you humans like to play in the ocean.
You have been protected and served. Pay your taxes.
They just stick a sticker on your head, like walk out, get the bill.
Yeah.
You're like, $2,934 for coming and shooting my fish?
Mm-hmm.
That's what it goes, man. That's what it goes. But if you don't need them, that's what happens. But when you need them, you're like,
yeah.
I've just been shot, stabbed, and something happened to my anus. What's going on? Can you get somebody over? And they're like, well, actually, everybody's on lunch break right now. Are you bleeding out? Yes, I'm bleeding out. Oh, yeesh.
Oh, all right, man.
Take a number. You're number 489. Like 489,000. What?
Having a rough go of it, man. Well, hang in there.
We're hoping
Do
to get
your best.
better. We're going to make a post for you on Facebook after you're gone.
We're sending thoughts and prayers.
Loving. They send a wreath. Loving father. Everything you're not. There's nothing, it's like whatever. He was an amazing firefighter. We don't know.
They just start asking you like immediately what you want on your headstone. Like, it's not even guaranteed that I'm going to die.
Then they bring a wreath and it says like, Happy St. Patrick's Day.
Yeah.
They're like, was he Irish? No, but he is deceased.
Mm-hmm.
He's gone.
And then after they retire, those same people go on to look for Bigfoot and talk about how they're former law enforcement. And you're supposed to take them seriously because they're former law enforcement.
Yeah, I had somebody tell me something.
Now you look at here, boy. I'm former law enforcement. You better respect me. Back that thin blue line, boy. While I'm out here looking for Bigfoot, I'm former law enforcement. That's all I know.
You need to be doing it on camera. You're not doing it.
I used to enforce the hell out of that law. Now I'm gonna lay down the law to you, boy. Bigfoot's flesh and blood. You hear me now, boy? Ain't no damn hocus pocus around here. I ain't about that damn nonsense, boy. You stupid. You about dumb as hell.
Ain't about that.
You better respect me. I'm former law enforcement.
We ain't about that paranormal life.
Former law enforcement. That's what I is. What is you? What the hell is you, boy? You ain't never enforced no damn law. I was out there putting my life on the line every damn day for your freedom. For your freedom of speech.
Yeah, that's right.
Every day, riding parking tickets, saving lives.
All day long. All day long. You understand? Enforcing the law. You get it?
For me, your shit has been overrun with trash from littering. Boy, I say it's saving.
Let me tell you something. So we got reported on Monday. The show we did on Monday got reported, and then YouTube cleared us. So to my ops, nice try. Keep it up. You're doing great. You've managed to get one video, and only some of the advertising is available for that video. But other than that, it's just, what happens though, they slow you down, and so you don't get your full revenue when it matters most, which is like a day or two right after. And then, but I thought I'd let you know. Keep trying. You keep plugging away. Every day it's a new circus. Somebody was telling me something today, a very large YouTuber. We were talking, and they were saying something about that side. In particular, the roofer never ends. This guy's reached out to like 100 people. No bullcrap. Just to preach the word against me. Preach the word so you guys will not be deceived by this evil man. Because he's probably got handlers, is what I'm thinking. Somebody's probably got. Well, if you don't shut him down, you in trouble, boy. Oh, I'll take care of it. Don't worry. Give me another chance. Probably. That's probably what's happening. I think so. Because who else goes after somebody like this? This is ridiculous. Unless you're extremely gay.
Or unless you're extremely former law enforcement.
Which is still same thing. I mean, I'm just saying. He's hanging around out there in the middle of nowhere, slapping each other up with the roofing, with the roofing glue. You know what's going on. You don't know what's going on out there. You have to be, because who gets obsessed with another dude like that, man? I can understand these women, like you ladies out there, like Kool-Aid and the other one, the one that bashed her dad's head, our husband, whatever, beat him up.
Oh yeah, well the angels held them down.
Yeah, those two they have big time crushes on me. They love me. They're like, look at this. When I do this, they run straight to the bedroom, and they dream of me. They dream of me, and I'm just like, look, you cannot have me. This doesn't belong to you. So then they attack my sweet wife because she, she's there with me, and they're like, I hate them. I hate it. They shouldn't be allowed to have that. Camelot belongs to me. You can't have Camelot. You can have chamomile. Go drink some chamomile and calm down. Calm yourself down. A little pause there so I could savor the moment of them going, what? Because they're watching right now.
Yeah.
It's like a cartoon. I hope Christopher Lee isn't watching him. And
you can feel that vitriolic anger from here.
They'll be laughing.
You can feel it remotely.
Thank you to those that donated and got the memberships for people. We're not doing the giveaway right now tonight until we can get time. Today it rained and hailed.
Mm-hmm.
It rained and it hailed, and it didn't. From what I can tell, it didn't do a lot of damage. Now I went around the neighborhood. I say I went around the neighborhood. I was driving from there to here, through the neighborhood, and we saw some damage.
Yeah,
we saw trees and things down, and God is good. And nothing really happened to us. Nothing really happened to us. I was like, dude, this is insane. That hail was 3 inches. 3-inch hail. Big, and it doesn't look like it. I can't be for certain. It might be a few little things. I don't know, but it looked like our vehicles and our roof were spared. But God is good. Yeah, things worked out. So here we got 373 people in here. Let's get started. I got a lot to talk about. We're just over here being goofy, being silly, just whatever. We're not crawling around on roofs slapping each other up with glue, but we're hanging out, tar or whatever it is that they do. So what are we talking about here? We got to talk about this guy. Okay, so we got a guy that reached out to us. His name was Ian. And Ian, you got to bear with me. I'm a little nasally here. I got to get one of these lozenges. Just forgive me. Give me 1 second, folks. I'll be right back. Don't go anywhere. Tony says it missed him entirely. But you're down in South Austin, though, Tony. You're way down there. Seems like that's where all the work is at now. Is way down south down there. It's going to be, and then we're going to have a site that's even further down there now because of this. So anyway, I'm talking here. So the guy that reached out to me, his name is Ian, and him and his best friend Leon. I say best friends, but they call each other brothers because they grew up together to the point where they're like brothers. And Leon even at one point went out with Ian's sister for 14 years. They didn't get married, but they were on again, off again. They have children together. And so they were like pretty much brother-in-laws and brothers, whatever. And so they ended up going to an area of Canada we've talked about before. And they did logging work there up in Canada. They also did some in Alaska. So they traveled around. They were from Virginia, by the way, Virginia. And when they were young, they both had some weird encounters with the only way to describe what this is ghosts. I mean, they were ghosts. Ian's house was haunted. And so he didn't. They grew up with Appalachians, so they had all kinds of stuff. They told me a lot of crazy stuff, a lot of weird stuff. It's kind of like that ranch that we were talking about down in Mexico. When people message me and they say, I have a ton of experiences, I love to hear that because that is a ton of material. And it gives you an insight into the phenomena of what we're dealing with, of what I call paranormal, because to me, paranormal is of course it's ghosts, you know that, but it's cryptids, it's aliens, it's all of it. It's all of it together. It's all paranormal. It's not of the norm. You know what I mean? And so this guy said that we'll start from the beginning here. When they were young, they were 11-year-old kids or 10-year-old kids. Well, he was 10, and his friend that lived down the road, you know, they were Appalachian. They ran around with no shoes, you know, or most of the year till it got too cold. And they grew up kind of like I did, you know, going out finding frogs and tadpoles and crawfish, you know, crawdads. Yeah. You know, well, they didn't tell me crawdads, but that's what I did. But they were looking, you know, for snakes and things like that. I caught a few garden snakes back in the day, garter snakes, things like that, and tried to bring them in. My mom's like, "No, you know, you can't bring them in here." I'm like, "It's not harmful. It's a harmless. I don't care. It'll poop everywhere." It's my mother's excuse for everything. You bring an earthworm in the house, it's gonna poop. It's gonna poop everywhere. It's gonna be all over the walls, the ceiling, the floor, the dogs, everything. It's gonna cover everything. The whole earth will be covered by earthworm poop. And so
it's gonna run up the light bill somehow.
Yeah, it's gonna run up the light bill. That's everybody's mom right there, right?
I'm coming in and out.
Don't go in and out. Yeah,
run up my light bill.
So Ian, and his buddy Leon, and Leon, he's a character. I don't know how to describe that guy more than like Ian is more of a more kind of a reserved, kind of calm, and Leon is just he gets mad real easy. Not at me. He didn't get mad at me, but he was getting mad. Boy, his grandkids were aggravating him. Well, then again, one of them did hit him with like a plastic gun when he was talking to me. So maybe I got the wrong impression, but he seemed like he was just highly agitated. And he's like, "I promise you, I'm not normally like this." So he's walking around carrying a 3-year-old while he's talking to me. It's his grandson. So he had 3 kids he was having to watch, man. And he's barely a little bit older than me, but he's got a real bad hip. But when he was young, they were loggers. And Ian actually listens to the show. Shout out to you. He's not, by his own admission, I say you're a paratrooper. He says he's not really a paratrooper. He doesn't make it to every episode, whatever. He's not like totally invested. So he's not part of the cult. So what? I get it. You will be. You will be. Mm-hmm. And so he tells me, he says, I got my friend Leon. And so we ended up, we moved. We were, in our late teens. We're very poor. Very poor. He's like, and we were unusual. We each had 3 sisters. Weird, 3 sisters. He has a younger brother, but Leon didn't. He just had 3 sisters. And he said that we were like not only were we living in the Appalachians where everybody's poor, he goes, we were considered like the fancy rich people because we had, 2 vehicles. He goes,
Yeah.
my parents managed to get out of there and get jobs, and he's like, we moved away. It's like you go back to the holler, what he calls it.
Yeah.
And he said it's like going back to the hood. And they're
Yeah.
like, what you got there? That fancy there car,
Yeah.
And he was just talking about how the people acted like he had gone away and become civilized,
Yeah.
He's like, yes, I have some Grandpa Pond. You can buy it at the grocery store for $4.
How's life in the big city?
Yep. That's what my family does to me. How's
Yeah.
the big city?
Yeah.
And so I got it. I totally understood. And we were joking and, we cracked each other up. What's funny, though, he said we had been to some dark, desolate areas of the hills up in there in the Appalachian, hunting, doing all kinds of crazy stuff. He goes, we heard Bigfoot. We know it was Bigfoot. He's like, but what happened to me, he goes, when we lived in Canada, he's like, and when we got the job up there, he goes, we were lit. And what got him to contact me was we were talking about Saskatchewan. And we were up there logging one year. And he goes, and then the next year we went to Alaska. And he goes, I hated it. I hated Alaska. It was horrible. It was a very bad experience. He goes, I didn't like it out there. There were too many bears. For real. Like he said, he had an incident with a bear, and so, but we're not here to get it all, talk about that. He said, so I ended up, saying, hey, I want to move back to Canada. I want to stay there. I want to live there. It was very beautiful and very desolate. And he liked that. And so he told Leon, he's like, hey, you and my sister come to Canada. Let's move to Canada. And that's where the relationship between Ian's sister and Leon really took off, and they stayed together for 4 solid years at that point. But what happened when they moved to Canada, he's like, we got this place. It was right there on the lake. Of course, there's a million freaking lakes up there. He still, to this day, he owns that place. So I'm not going to say where it's at, and it's not important where it is. It's just up there in Canada. Let's put it that way. And whenever they came time to sell it, he was having a hard time because it was so out in the middle of nowhere. And so he just gave up on it. And then after a while, he just said, you know what? I'm just going to keep it. And so he goes back periodically, but he's using it now. He's trying to get people to go out there to stay for the weekends or whatever. But he tells them point blank, he's like, look, there's something out there. And it just full disclosure, it terrorized me and my family. And most of those people, they don't, thank you for that. So they don't take him seriously. And to date, he's been doing that for about 2 years. He's been trying to do the Airbnb thing or whatever and rent it out. But he said that there's only been two people. One saw something out in the woods, and then one saw something by the house. So the one out in the woods, they were deep out into the woods. They had hiked for like 2 miles, and they saw something. He's convinced that where he was at, which is not that close. It's not that far, but it's not really close to, where, what was her name? What was the woman's name we did? Elisa.
Mm-hmm.
Where Elisa and them had that weird stuff, her and her husband. It would be about 100 miles from there, like to the west, northwest, whatever. So it's not that close, but it's, still close enough to say, hey, this is weird. We talked on the show on Sunday about a guy named Bevan that had something happen to him in Mississippi. This is kind of like that. It's kind of along those lines, but it was, I'll just tell you, when Leon showed up, he said, dude, when we were kids, and this is the weird paranormal thing about it, they had these weird ghost encounters that they had at his house. He goes, we didn't have money for even a Nintendo. He said, we had 2 vehicles, and one of them, my dad, is a work truck. He was always working on it. He goes, when I was a kid, when I thought that the work truck, I thought that was what that was. That she was always working on it. Like, that's the work truck, Like, oh, Daddy's working on it. That's why it's a work truck. And so he goes, I thought that's what that meant. That's what, you did with the work truck, was you just worked on it all the time.
Yeah.
So my brother's like, his little brother's like, maybe quicker on the uptake, whatever. He's like, nuh-uh, you dummy. My brother Jack was always like, that's because daddy goes to work in it. And he's like, oh, okay. And by his own admission, Ian said, dude, I've always been kind of like head in the clouds, whatever. And he's like chopping wood, working, on the trees, stuff like that, and getting lumber. It's just right up my alley. He goes, I like those jobs where you just don't think a lot,
Yeah.
He's like, but Leon's a very gripey, grumpy type of guy who's always like kind of aggravated no matter what happens. And he's like, he'll be calm and cool under like serious pressure, but then little things will get to him. And so, he goes, we got there to work and we decided to move back up there. I do. He goes, I stayed there for almost 6 weeks. And then I told him, hey, come live with me. And then a month later, they showed up. He's like, and during that time, he goes, nothing really strange happened. He goes, but I've always believed that my younger sister was a conduit for this crap. He's like, I believe that she was the one that brought a lot of weird stuff because we'd be there at the house chilling. He goes, and I remember when we finally did get a Nintendo, he goes, I was in my early teens. He's like, and I remember playing Super Nintendo and she would come in and the screen would get lines on it. And next thing you know, it would start over. It's like something was messing with it. Sometimes there would be electrical storms and the lightning would be striking all around our house and no one else's. Weird stuff like that. He goes, dude, and I remember one time a weird incident when he was a kid that there was ball lightning. Do you know what ball lightning is? He described it as ball lightning, but I broke the news to him. I said, that might not have been ball lightning. That might have actually been a demon or a jinn, something like that. Because it had a consciousness about it. And it was like chasing them around their yard and down a trail. It was a greenish, glowing looking thing. And I told him, I said, maybe you have, maybe you were haunted. Your family was haunted, not so much as the property. So he goes, yeah, it crossed my mind when I invited them to come out there to stay. And he's like, I thought maybe I shouldn't do this. And he goes, and there was a part of me that said, hey, this probably shouldn't happen. But he did it anyway. And he invited him. He loves his little sister and he loves his whole family. And he says, and he liked Leon a lot. They were close, very close. His brother Jack went in a whole nother direction. He moved to the city and took a job and basically working for the county. And so he decided that it was time for him to move on and do something with himself. And so that's what his brother did. But Leon, he's like, no offense to my real brother, but he goes, I was closer to Leon than I was my younger brother. Mm-hmm. He's like, me and my younger brother could not be more different. We were totally different people. And Leon didn't have a brother. So he goes, so I was always kind of like his younger brother, only a year apart, He's like, and we went to school together. We were in the same grade. And I was like, wait a minute. I was like, Leon's a year older than you. He goes, yeah, I know. He got held back. Well, he flunked. He had behavioral problems. He hit a teacher when he was like 12.
That'll do it.
Yeah. And the teacher spanked him because there was corporal punishment back in the day. These guys are like my age, a little bit older than me. And he said, dude, we're sitting there, we're playing Super Nintendo, and it's like everybody else has already moved on to like N64 or whatever. We're still playing Super Nintendo. He's like, we were always behind. N64, then everybody's playing GameCube. He's like, we're always behind. And I told him, I said, don't feel bad. It was like that when I was younger, too. We had the Atari. There was only a couple years left on it. And then everybody was already moving on to Nintendo. I didn't have a Nintendo until everybody else already had one. And, he was telling us that they'd be sitting at their house and they lived out in the middle of like nowhere. But it was kind of like not a subdivision, but everybody had like a couple of acres, Mm-hmm. And so the further down you went down the holler, he said they got more poor. People were more and more poor till you get down to the bottom, and there was just nothing. I mean, the people there didn't have anything. They were just very, very poor people, and it is very sad. People don't realize that they're some of the poor. The people of the Appalachians are some of the poorest people on the planet, dude. They don't even realize that. You don't hear about them, and they live in absolute abject poverty. That's crazy. And so he said one night we heard this howling, screeching noise. He goes, and Leon, he calls him my brother. So if he's referring to his brother, that's who he's talking about. Because my brother opens the window and we see this creature. And this was the only thing that could be considered a cryptid or something when he was younger. He said this tall, skinny, looking creature comes crawling out between the trees, and its arms and legs looked like twigs, like tree branches. He said, you know how a praying mantis walks, how it looks?
Yeah.
It was like that. Like one of the, what they call a walking stick,
Yeah.
but it was white. He goes, and we could see it clearly. And it walked around and it kind of looked and it was looking at us and it was kind of wobbling back and forth. And then it just turned and went back into the crawl back into the woods.
Yeah.
The body was just humanoid looking, whatever. It wasn't like a, it didn't have the body of a mantis or anything like that, but just the way it moved. And then it crawled back and it had these big pink eyes. And he's like, I'll never forget it. He goes, and I really always thought that it was like a cryptid or something. But, you know, over the years, him and his buddy, his brother would talk about it, you know, this weird creature, whatever. So get this. Now, this, I'm going to tell you the story, and then you can make up your minds what you believe or you don't believe. If you think that this is just, you tell me. We'll talk about what your opinions are after it's over. So his sister tells him when she's like 19 years old and he's like 22 or whatever, or 23, and he's living up in the deal. And he says, you know, Leon always had a thing for my other sister, but my younger sister just really was gaga over him. And he goes, my older sister was kind of like, whatever. She didn't really care. And Leon was all about her. But then she ended up going off with this other guy and moving out to the Pacific Northwest. And so my younger sister was like, you know, like SpongeBob, you know, she was all excited. So she ends up getting him and going out with him. And then he's kind of like, whatever. He's like, but then they fall in love. And then they just have the most tumultuous relationship for years. Because it was ridiculous. He's like, but when they stayed up there with me at this cabin, it was a 2-bedroom cabin. So it worked out. He said, and it was dirt cheap. And the money that I had saved up from sawing logs, as he calls it, he's like, I bought it. And then Leon came and he goes, I still owed such and such amount of money. So Leon threw some money into it. He goes, so by the time we were done, we only had to work for about, 6 to 8 months, and then we had it paid off. So it was a good deal.
Yeah.
He goes, and it was beautiful. In fact, he goes, it would be considered paradise if it wasn't for whatever was there. And he really believes that this area where he was at, he had no neighbors really, hardly at all. Some lived on the other side of the lake, and they were seasonal. Thank you for those donations, guys. We appreciate it greatly. You have no idea. Jerry Cahill and Lawrence Morgan and everybody else that donated. Jordan Cogburn, Larry Sharp, Jerry, the gifted memberships, Millen, I don't know how to say, Millen V66. Thank you to everybody that's donated and helped out. We appreciate it so much. And so he said, he goes, I told him to come and stay. And he goes, and it was not even 6 hours that we had gotten back when I had gone and picked them up at the airport. We drove a long, long way. He goes, and it wasn't even 6 hours into their stay there. And my sister, we're eating dinner. He's like, I'd made some shepherd's pie. He's always been a very good cook. And he said she's eating and she's like, y'all remember that white pale creature? He's like, and we're like looking at each other and he's like, yeah. And she goes, yeah, I just see it all the time. And he was like, what? Like they were both like, what? And like, and Leon just stops eating and Leon's like, what are you talking about?
I'm over here like, what?
He's like, we saw it once. She goes, well, you guys might have seen it once. He goes, but me and well, their other sister, Lacey. He's like, me and Lace, they called her Lace. Me and Lace saw it a couple times. Lace and her were Irish twins, and they shared a bedroom. And she's like, yeah, we saw it like multiple times. And they were just like, holy crap. So his older sister is the one that Leon, so he didn't really want to mention her too much because then, she would get aggravated, And so her name is Beth. But Beth would get aggravated. She'd be like, why are you mentioning her, So Beth and Lace, they're Ian's younger sisters, they end up having a phone conversation with Lace. And she's living down here in Texas because she's smart. But she's down here in Texas and she's going to school. She was going to Baylor, I think, but that's not smart. But anyway, wow. Thank you for that donation. Holy crap. Everybody's like, oh, we're done for the night. We don't got to donate now. Turner got it. He got it, folks. We're good. We're good, guys. Don't worry about it. They took care of him. Whew, thank goodness I don't got to help. Whoa.
They all collectively put their wallets away.
No, they're all gonna. They had their credit card out. Oh, well, never mind. Never mind. I have a goal by the end of the month. I need $1,200.
Mhm.
I need it. Crack ain't cheap no more, guys. Come on now.
Don't ask no question.
Yeah, don't ask no questions.
Uh-huh.
So, what happened was they had a 3-way conversation on the phone, and he says, you know, back in those days, it wasn't just cell phones, whatever. And this phone connection was, especially in wintertime, it was non-existent. You weren't going to call. It was like The Shining up there. And we know this because we've talked about Alicia and some other people's stories from Canada in that same area. And that's how it works. Like when we get a story, we talk about it. I get a lot of people from the Philippines because we talked about the Philippines, and I guess it shows up on the algorithms, and then they go and I don't know exactly how that works, but I don't really promote the show that much. You know what I mean? Whenever somebody does, it's usually not me. But they'll be like, hey, I'm from the Philippines. And they'll tell me. And this has happened multiple times. And they've given me story after story after story. So it's about time I'm going to do some stories on the Philippines. Again, I'm going to do like a Strange Demons of Japan. I'm going to do that one for the Philippines because it's just crazy.
Mm-hmm.
So thank you to my audience from the Philippines, because I actually almost every month I sell a book there too. But it's really weird how that works. Thank you for that donation. We appreciate it. So they get this, and that's Dee. Is that Day? Dee Day?
Yeah.
But he said, you know, when she said that, he goes, my friend's jaw dropped. He's like, you've never told me this. But he knew that the older sister had seen something. And it's weird because maybe it was a familial thing, because the older sister, when she was living out there in the Pacific Northwest in Vancouver, not Canada, Washington, she saw something right there by the border when she was out hiking. And that city is surrounded by mountains. You know, it's like a crater almost, if you've ever been there. And she said that she saw something when she was hiking up in the mountains that looked like a crawler, but it was jumping from tree to tree. And she went out there when she saw it when she was like 25. And so this was a little bit after all, you know. So what happens with these people? They start talking to her, and they said, dude, we drank some whiskey and we talked till 3 a.m. Now this is spring going into summer. We had not experienced the winter out there together, you know. And so he goes, even I had not been out there in the winter. I had been in the cold of the Virginia, you know, hills, whatever, but I thought that was cold.
Yeah.
He's like, this was unbelievably ungodly. And he said, so we started talking, and she starts giving us all these different encounters. There's like maybe a dozen of these things that she had seen. And they were all about this pale creature that she would even see it when she went to sleep. And he goes, you've never told me this. She's like, you never asked me. Y'all would always talk about what you saw. And she's like, and I was scared to talk about it because this creature would speak to me. And they were like, what?
Whoa.
And she said, yeah. She said, it would be in the window, and it would be giving me orders, telling me not to say anything, and that not to trust anyone. And she's like, and this is my opinion, my words, not theirs, but in a lot of ways, it became her inner monologue. Mm-hmm. This creature. And this creature asked her for forgiveness. It was always asking her for forgiveness. And she's like, forgiveness for what? And then it would say, the thought would pop into her head, it would say, because of what I'm going to do to you. Like, yeah. Like almost like it's threatening me or something. Yeah. You know, and so it was like it was threatening her. And she was like, I'm terrified of what this thing's going to do, because it kept saying one of these days, like it would say that. And it would say, please forgive me. You know, and she would just be like, you know, I don't forgive you for what? And so she said, and me and Lace would both hear it, so they had this conversation a couple days later, and they were talking about this creature, and Lace, the sister, was talking about having seen it go into mom and dad's room one time, and dad got really ill. And they think that that's what he ended up with, cancer, and then he ended up dying. But this thing would move around into their house, and she said we would be sleepwalking, which, you know, Ian told me, he goes, I knew they sleepwalk. I didn't know that, you know. And she's like, we would leave the door unlocked and this creature would open the door and come in. And it was very much like a physical creature, a flesh and blood creature. And their friends came over one time for a sleepover. There was 3 friends that lived down the road. They were all girls, and that whole family was just, kind of Looney Tune, like we were talking about Looney Tunes, and they were just like, they wanted to play with Ouija boards. They wanted to contact stuff. And so one day they were messing around with one in the back room. They had this back room, which their dad used to use for like tools and stuff. So, but they cleared them a space so they could all camp out back there, and it was like a little add-on to the house. And the roof leaked. It was terrible. But they would sleep back there sometimes when they had a bunch of friends over. And so they pulled the Ouija board out, and this thing shows up at the back window, at the back door, and the friends saw it and they freaked the heck out. And then after that, those 3 sisters started having run-ins or encounters with this thing. But not only that, they would see this Bigfoot-like creature. And now Ian's family didn't really see that. They heard noises, so they thought it might have been Bigfoot, but they didn't see him or Leo did not see this in Virginia. The neighbors did. But he said the first, like a week into us all living together, he's like, I went out and did what I always did. I was chopping firewood, preparing, getting ready all summer long. You're just preparing for winter, basically. He's like, and we're winterproofing the house, and we're doing everything we can. We put some siding and then some stuff that the what do you call that? The stuff that keeps you from
Insulation.
And he's like, we're putting insulation, all this kind of stuff in there. But there's a name for it, what they were using. But
Fiberglass.
yeah, it's something. No, it's something like that. But it's a name for it.
Spraying foam.
And so they did all this winterproofing. He's like, and then he goes, I turn around. He's like, and I was on a ladder. He's like, and I see this creature standing there, and there were lots and lots of berries around where he was at, And this thing's just eating them like handfuls. And he goes, and it's just looking at me, like just chewing. And it's not doing anything. It's just standing there. And he goes, and I turn around, and it's 8 foot tall. The shoulders went up into the head. It was crazy. Like the traps were so big. I thought I had big traps. And he said this thing's traps were humongous, And I asked him, how wide do you think the shoulders were? And he said 4 to 5 feet. Just unbelievable.
Jeez.
I've heard this before, these big shoulders, He's like, and the thing just turned and walked off into the woods, man. He said it had a big old butt. There's this big butt, just walking, this big old butt with big old tree trunk legs, and walked into the woods. Tyvek, there you go. Yeah, it was something like that. But he said this thing went into the woods, and he's just sitting there going like, what in the hell did I just see? And he said that it was crazy. Like, he goes, I just got off the ladder and I ran inside, and I was like holding a hammer, man. I'm like, hey. And then I dropped it, and everybody just kind of came out of the kitchen, and they're like, what's going on? And he's like, I just saw Bigfoot. And they were like, what? So he described this Bigfoot. It was like a chocolate brown colored creature, humongous upper body, built like a power lifter, not a bodybuilder. Sometimes you hear people talk about the dog man, and they'll say it looks like a bodybuilder. This thing, it didn't look like that. It looked like a power lifter, big, kind of fat a little bit around the waist, but not obese. It was obviously very mobile. And he said that it was crazy. He goes, so the next day or 2 days later, he goes, we had an ATV out there, a couple of them. And he's like, and we had put a lot of money into this place, and my sister had gone out on the ATV for a ride with Leon. And he said that I stayed behind. I was busy working. I was a worker bee, and Leon would help me, but he had to take breaks because he had anger problems, whatever. So he'd let him go, and he'd drink a couple beers and then, come back, and he'd work. And he goes, but I would stop, and Leon would keep working even after dark. He's like, the guy could see in the dark. It's because we were kids. He had these cat eyes, not that didn't look like it, but he could see in the dark.
Yeah.
And he goes, we used to joke around. Me and my friends used to always tease him, say, you can see in the dark, dude. We'd be out there playing baseball late at night, and he could see. Nobody else could. Throwing the football, he sees it. Nobody else does. So he'd be out there, and he'd work, and he'd go up on the roof, and he'd work, and he goes, a couple days later, they were riding around the foliar, and they came back, and they said they saw something. Now, here's the weird thing. What Leon told me, there were different creatures out there. Different creatures. They saw this pale humanoid crawler looking creature, except it didn't look like the one from Virginia. It had these kind of like pointy elf-like ears, and it had a little bit of a protruding jaw, but more insectoid looking than like, not like a canid,
Mhm.
like a muzzle, but like a little bit of a, like almost like a proboscis,
Yeah.
And they thought this thing, it's weird looking, dude. They said it had a grasshopper looking head.
Oh,
The way they described
the
it, right?
hell?
Weird looking clawed fingers, and it crawled around the other side of a tree and blended in with the tree. It was kind of grayish brown, and it blended in with it. The
Like a camouflage?
yeah, everything.
Like an octopus?
And so they were just like, holy crap. So then when they drove back, they told him about it. And he says, man, that's weird. He goes, first we see this Bigfoot type creature. 2 days later, you're seeing that. And he's like, and then he's like, we all started having these weird dreams. He's like, and he goes, to this day, he goes, I don't have them anymore. Now that I'm not living with them, I don't have any of this. Of course, he doesn't stay there now. He stays, in his home state, right? But it's miles away from where he was born. And he's like, I don't have these problems. I'm married. I have kids. I don't, there's, and he's like, I'm an older dad, I have like a 17-year-old son, and I'm like, 50, But he said, dude, it was crazy. Like we started having these weird encounters with these beings, like, and he goes, my sister still has these dreams where she sees this pale creature that crawls around, and it'll come toward her in the bed or whatever. Now, I didn't really talk to her, but I did talk to Leon. What Leon told me, he said that thing that he was witnessing, he's like, that thing ended up crawling onto the property one night when he was up top on the roof. He goes, and he's like, our friend Mark had come there, and he was working. He was helping us. So he goes, Mark was there, and he was sleeping downstairs. And he goes, Mark is the lightest sleeper ever. He goes, we met the guy at the logging camps in Alaska. Great guy. He did something I did. He used to pick cherries on a cherry farm.
Yeah.
And he had a Bigfoot encounter right there, and they're the Dalles, where we've gotten reports of them. And that when I was at the camp, I heard people talking about Bigfoot. And some of the guys up in Washington, same thing. So these people were talking about Bigfoot. One guy worked at the Jolly Green Giant plant up there in Washington. I think it was near Walla Walla. And he was telling me, man, one time we saw like 20 of us. He's like, it was me and 2 Canadians and three Americans, and the rest were all from Mexico. And we were all there, and we saw this Bigfoot just walk right through the plant, like right there. We're outside taking our break. It just walked right through. A Bigfoot, actual Bigfoot. I don't know the description. It's been years ago. He told me that story. But anyway, back to this. So he says this isn't uncommon. He goes, we talked to the people from across the lake. They were there for the summer. They got there in late May, about this time of year. And he said they told us they were really nice people, man. They were really nice people. He goes, they were like Scottish. They were used to the cold, One of them was originally from Nova Scotia, and they had bought that land or whatever. And they had ancestors, they had cousins, whatever, that still lived in Scotland, like Lockerbie or whatever. So they came, and they were staying there, and there was some Scottish people there. And the one guy that owned it, he was a Scottish descended guy from Nova Scotia. So he was like, I'm going to be leaving and going back to Scotia. So you guys, if you need anything, let me know. He's like, it's my cabin. My family's here. They're here for the summer from Scotland. And so they wanted to stay up there. And so this Scottish family was there. Now, this wasn't the first time they had been there. So that family told them, they said, hey, you got to be careful up here. There's some weird things up here, And they told them, they said that they had seen the locals, as they called them. They said that there was a clan, well, a tribe, whatever. My words is tribe. They said clan, but tribe of Bigfoot. He goes, you got your Bigfoot up in there. They roam around out there, And they were just very, very nice people. He goes, they drink you under the damn table. He goes, and they loved to elk hunt, moose hunt, everything. They were just amazing people. They had a larder. They shared food, and then they were our closest neighbors, about 10 miles on the other side, of the lake where we were at. And he said the lake had this little, like, kind of a little land mass that was in between that and another lake, and then there was a smaller one, right? He goes, and the smaller one would freeze over first, like pretty quick, and then the bigger one, it would stay hollow, at least through most of the winter down to the middle because it was really deep. So you could ice fish all year there. And he said that the layer of ice, though, would go about 3 feet, 4 feet. It was thick, very
Dang.
thick. Sometimes you had to like really dig. And he goes, and we spent, 2 years up there. I did. And he said that we were determined not to be run off by these creatures. He goes, and so one day he goes, I was out there and I was fishing at the lake, and this was, still late spring or early summer. And one of these creatures came up while he was fishing, walked right up to him. He turns on, he looks. This is Leon. And it grabbed his fish and just walked off with it. And he was standing there in shock. Like, he goes, and I was like, do you have a gun? He said, yeah, I have a gun. Hey, what's up, babe? He says, how you doing? Thank you for that donation. And thank you for the other people that donated too. Thank you, Debbie Cawthrow. You're such a sweetheart. We appreciate it. Thank you, Abe, too. Appreciate it, brother. And so it just grabbed his fish, and he's like standing there, and he's got a rifle. He said, "There's a 308. It wasn't no punk." He goes, "But I was scared. I was like, I wasn't going to try and shoot this thing." He goes, and I had a nice 45 on my hip, and I was like, "Go ahead, take it, big guy. I'm not." This creature was black. It was all black, and its face, it was just like it looked like gnarly. It was horrible looking. He's like, the teeth were just nasty, rotted looking. It just looked gross. It stunk horribly. He's like, and his eyes were real beady, and he was just staring at me with this angry look on his face, and he grabbed the fish and walked away. I've heard encounters like this where people have had, it reminds me of Charles Hamill's encounter. I don't know if you guys have heard that, but Charles told me his encounter and said I was welcome to tell it on the show, but he was at a dam. I'd loved him to come on and tell. He tells it so well. But he's at a dam right there in Oklahoma, and this thing, while he was fishing, and it just came up and did the same thing, just snatched his food, like, get out here, man. I don't care. It doesn't give a crap that you see it. They don't care. They're not trying to hide. Everybody's like, they're so shy. Really? Tell that to some of the people from Louisiana all the way to Alaska. They'll tell you that, and they're not shy. They don't give a shit. They'll come up and they'll grab whatever you got. Let's see how shy they are. They're not. And so this thing grabbed his food and just walked off. He goes, man, I'm done. He just goes, walks back to his truck, drives back to the cabin. And he says, man, I just had a Bigfoot come up and just take 6 fish and take off. I'm not going to be fishing for Bigfoot, And he's like, I can't deal with this. These creatures are scary. I mean, and this thing was about 9 feet tall, according to him, 9 foot tall. And he said, dude, it was unbelievable, man. He goes, the creatures were just roaming around out there. He goes, and then you had that weird insectoid creature. So he goes, I was working up on the roof, and almost done with the roof. We had another day out of doing the roof, and our friend Mark was there. So Mark was there, and then later our friend Walker showed up. So he had Mark and Walker, but Walker didn't show up for another 2 weeks. So they were up there, and Mark was, he comes out, and he goes, Mark likes to partake of the devil's lettuce, and he kind of wakes up. He's like, man. He's like, you haven't heard me yelling and screaming and hollering and whatever. And Leon says, dude, I just had this pale crawler thing, whatever. He actually called it a white crawler. He said it just came from around the storage shed out there. And the log, they had a little enclosure, a little log enclosure. He's like, and it just walked right up, just what the freaking heck? And Mark's dog was out hiding in the backyard, in the back of the cabin, like under the porch. He had this big old freaking Pyrenees, was just terrified. It was like, it wasn't coming out, dude. And he was like, Mark's like, where's my dog? He goes, I don't know. It's probably peeing itself. That thing just came out, right? Just roaming around. He's like, I'm yelling, jumping up and down. And he goes, what are you guys, in a trance? And Mark was like, well, I just woke up because, they were actually doing a bunch of work, sawing a bunch of wood and stuff, because they were trying to do a little add-on to it, right? And he says, well, I was working the saw, but then I just got really sleepy. So this is another thing, too. They kept telling me that they were falling asleep. Like driving, falling asleep. They would be just watching, whatever, radio, listening to the radio, watching what little TV they could get with the satellite they had that would go out all the time when it snowed. But in the spring, it wasn't that big a deal. He's like, we could get the satellite to work, And he's like, we would just be sitting there, everybody just falling asleep. And then these creatures would show up like, like they were coming out of a portal or something. And this is what they told me. It's the portal. I didn't even say that. They did. And so whenever he was up on the roof, he said this thing was like crawling around, and he goes, and I'm trying to get everybody's attention saying, hey, he said, I don't want to come down because this 7 foot tall creature just crawling around and standing up, crawling around. And it was staring up at him like it wanted him to come down. He said, I got the feeling that it wanted to eat me. He's like, and for some reason, he goes, the thought went into my mind that this creature isn't going to eat me like it was going to get this. Having no like previous or prior experience with these creatures, right? He had no way to know this or to think this. He said that he believed that this creature was going to bite him on the back top part of his head and then suck out the fluid of his body and his brain, starting with his brain. And I told Leon, I said, Leon, why would you think that? He goes, I don't know. I just thought it. It popped into my head. He's like, and I know it sounds absolutely gross and insane, but he goes, I had that thought. I thought, man, this vile creature is going to eat me that way. Like it came into his head. He goes, have you heard of anything like that? I said, yeah, I've heard of people say things like that. Like there was a person that was talking to, they were shopping, get this, of all things, at a JCPenney. And it wasn't a whole lot involved in this story. So that's why it's not something I've just, it's not. But there was a woman and her daughter that were shopping at JCPenney, and she said she encountered a reptilian. I said, how do you know? She goes, her eyes flipped like slot machines. And she's like, her eyes were like, bloop, 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 And she said, I saw it, and she was so cold and mean. And she goes, I looked down, and for a minute, I saw like a weird spark, and her hand looked like it was scaly. And I got this one from my DJ friend who told me something like, he's like, hey, this reptilian-looking person may or may not have been a reptilian when he was DJing in Reno, Nevada, came up and told him to play a song and grabbed him by the arm. And when he did, his eyes flipped, So he was dating this girl, and this girl and him exchanged stories. And he said this girl told him this happened at JCPenney. So she actually emailed me the story. So shout out to Veronica. Thank you for that. That's a crazy story. It's not a real long involved one, but yeah. And so she said that, she got the impression that this thing would like try to bite her in the back of the head and that she wanted to eat my daughter. And I was like, what made you think that? Like, humans have more intuition than we give ourselves credit for. If you ever been around somebody and you are immediately like, that person gives me the creeps. Being around them, and it happened, I'm not going to mention who it was, but at my conference, there was a person that was there. He was tagging along, and this is where I really got some bad vibes from this guy. And he was tagging along with another group of people who were vendors at my conference, let's put it that way. And the vibe I got from this dude was this weird low energy vibe, but it was like I got the impression in my mind that this dude was a very bad guy. And I talked to one of the people I was really close to at the time there, and we talked about it. And if he's being truthful or honest, he'll remember this. And I told him, I said, dude, something wrong with that guy. And he said he had the same vibe from him when he was at the Bigfoot conference in Tennessee. I'm not going to mention which one, but it was a very big conference, and that guy was there, and he was just like, dude, like you get the impression, like mental images of this person would do this to you if they could.
Yeah.
But, and I don't get that very often, but I've had it before, like in dealing with gangsters downtown and stuff.
Yeah, you can't ignore that when you see it.
They'll smile and look at you like, smile like the friendly assassin and act like they're all good. It's all good, but it's not all good in the hood because something is wrong. But I said, yeah, I get that. But there are people who've told me this before about like Dogman and stuff.
Mm-hmm.
There was a lady who was convinced that she knew who the Dogman was in her neighborhood. Well, you probably know what I'm talking about.
No.
And but that was in Florida.
Mm-hmm.
That was the lady in Florida. We haven't told her story yet. That's out of Tampa. That's a crazy story. Because there was but I told her, I said, that's not a Dogman. I don't know what a Dogman really is. There's no real definition to it, but that's a werewolf. That's what that is.
Yeah.
She said, well, my son said it's a Dogman. I said, well, it could be a Dogman, it could be a werewolf. We call it whatever, but we call it werewolf because that's what it is. And so this creature gave him the mental impression. And Leon's like, I never thought I was like psychic or anything like that.
Mm-hmm.
He's like, now when I was growing up, he goes, I did see stuff. He said, the S word. He said shit. He said, I saw shit. You know what shit is, right? Shit, like poop.
Mm-hmm.
So he says, no, I saw some shit when we went over in, in Ian's. He goes, I saw all kinds of shit over there. It was weird. He goes, I'd be sitting. He goes, and one time I saw what I thought like was this butterfly, and it morphed into like this ball. It just like morphed and got real big and turned into a ball of light. And he goes, and I thought, man, I've been up too long.
Yeah.
He goes, we were tripping, like not tripping, like, doing drugs. But he goes, I thought I was
just
tripping.
deliriously tired.
Yeah, delirious. He's like, I was 16, and Ian was 15. He goes, and he's like, he goes, I'm 11 months older than Ian, almost 11 months. He said so, but he said, dude, I saw this thing, and it looked like a butterfly. He goes, and I was the only one awake. I was playing a video game, and Ian was passed out. And his younger brother had just gone to his room to go sleep. He goes, and I stayed up. It was right there in the hallway. He goes, and so they did say that Ian's house was haunted. That it was always creepy, weird. It wasn't like something that just started, and whatever. The people that lived there before had lived there. They had built that house. That house was built in 1872. So that's a long time ago.
Yeah.
And that same family with 3 or 4 generations, and then they sold it to his grandfather in the 50s. And his grandfather said that there was something that used to walk or crawl down the stairs. He goes, and it would turn itself upside down. And he goes, I found this out because we were watching The Exorcist. This is what Leon and Ian told me, both of them. He goes, and my grandpa goes, yeah, when we first moved in over here, there used to be something that would crawl just like that down the stairs. He goes, we're like eating popcorn. We're like, what? Yeah. He goes, and then my sister Lace, she's like, yeah, I've seen something like that. It looks like it crawls backwards. But it doesn't crawl like how she, like in the Exorcist, the way that Lace told them, and Leon, repeated this, that it would crawl like how Reagan, that chick that played whatever, what's her name? What is her name that played in The Exorcist?
The character's name?
Yeah, the actress. What is her name? Linda Blair. And it's funny because at that Paracon, whatever we were at in San Antonio, I was talking with Richard Estep. I don't know if people know who that is. He's a pretty famous author and really, really nice guy. And him and Ken Gerhardt, we were all talking. And Ken said that he was on a panel with Linda Blair. He goes, we're up there. And he goes, I don't know how you end up with these situations. But I'm in a panel. I'm there with Linda Blair, But anyway, and there was another guy that was there, and I don't remember his name, but he was they were all there together, they were talking about it. And so anyway, she was walking backwards, but he said the other way, right? Oh, yeah. Walking the other way. And the head would spin around like that. And his grandfather told him that. So he goes, when I was a kid, I would hear something running up and down the stairs at night. He goes, and it would terrify me. My grandfather claimed to have seen it.
I saw it crawling out of your room the other night.
And he said that he goes, that's why. He said, that's why, because we got the place for a nickel on the dollar.
Yeah.
That's why we got that. He goes, there's a bunch of ghosts up in here.
Came with a tenant.
And he's like, so he goes, well, what I did, I called the preacher. And the preacher came. He goes, and the preacher ran out. Something smacked him, and he ran out of the house. That's how bad that house was.
Jeez.
So there's a whole bunch of stuff that Ian and them told me about the house or whatever. I could get into a whole bunch of creepy stuff, but we're talking about the Canada thing. And he said, so he goes, we were used to some weird stuff. He goes, but then, all this stuff was kind of like outside of the cabin. So Mark, was he was there, and Walker showed up. He was at a logging camp. He had come from Alaska too. Mark and him had bunked together a couple times. And so they were okay with sleeping on the couch in the living room, And he goes, and Bethany would go out, and she had a little garden going on. She had to go out and pick, tomatoes, all kinds of stuff, and make food. and Mark, his dad was an Italian, or his mother was Italian. And his mother would make all kinds of Italian dishes and stuff. So he was teaching Beth and them about making sauce. So he made some like this, red sauce. It was real good with garlic and all this stuff. He's like, so it was great. We were cooking and all kinds of stuff. And then Walker's girlfriend, she showed up. And so next thing you know, we had several people here, and we were working, and we built that extra wing to the cabin in no time. We built it, and it almost doubled the size of the cabin. Mm-hmm. He goes, and we got it done in 2 months. It was amazing how quickly, and it was well insulated. It was well put together. with solid wood. We were all lumberjacks and had a little bit of a carpentry understanding of carpentry work. So thank you, Joe Tupas. Appreciate that. But he said that it was a big undertaking. He's like, but there were so many weird things that were going on. Like we would all be asleep in the cabin at night because at night, there's nothing else going on. He's like, the only one that was up sometimes would be Mark. He would be up at night. And every now and then Leon would get up to use the restroom, get a drink of water, and Mark would be up and he would be staring out the window. Just staring out the front window. It's a big picture window. He goes, we put that window in. And he said that one time Leon told me this story after, Ian told me, but Leon told it to me in his firsthand. And he goes, I go down the stairs and here's like this loft where they had this extra bedroom that they had built. So they had 3 bedrooms there, and then they added 3 big rooms to the back side of it. And, so it made it a very big place. And he's like, he goes, I go out to the front of the old part of the cabin, and he goes, and I see Mark staring outside, and he's just standing there. He goes, I didn't think nothing of it. I went to sleep. He's like, but the next night, about 3 o'clock in the morning, he goes, I get up, I go to the bathroom once again. Mark's staring outside, and he's like a zombie all day.
Mm-hmm.
He's like, and we did a lot of hunting and fishing, and so some of us would go out and fish, other ones would work. And we had finished by July. We had finished all the work. We had started this, and it's a testament to Ian because amazing that you did that because according to him, he started in April by himself, and then they showed up in May. But he said, dude, and then it was just they just worked, and by July they were done with this. And he's like, day and night, we just work. But he goes, Mark was acting weird, really weird. And he's like, and nobody, Ian, everybody was asleep the day I saw that weird white pale thing. He goes, and Leon's like, I thought I was losing my freaking mind. I see this white grasshopper man is what he referred to it as.
Yeah.
He said, and of course, he's like, to be defiant is what he said. But he said Bethany, of course, referred it to as the cricket man. And he's like, grasshopper. She's like, cricket, whatever. Insect. It was a bug. It was a bug man.
Yeah.
Bug, humanoid bug, whatever.
Split technical hairs over what
Yeah,
that
exactly.
damn monster was.
Exactly. But being a woman, she had to disagree with her husband. She's like, look, it was a cricket. I just get it right. And you're wrong. You're always wrong.
I can't let you be right because then that means I have to be wrong.
He's like, this is a hammer. She's like, no, that is a nailing in tool. Okay? That's what it does. And it beats nails. It's a beater. Okay, fine. We'll call it that. Whatever. So he basically tells him, no, it looked more like a cricket. He goes, whatever. It looked more like a grasshopper man to me. And he said that nobody was out there. Nobody's paying attention to me. He goes, and then I go outside one day and I'm out there. And he goes, and I'm throwing some grease away. Like they had fried some food. He goes, and I'm throwing this grease out of there. He goes, and I hear this scream. And it's Walker's girlfriend. And she comes running from back out into the woods. And there was a bunch of different types of berries up in there. He's like, and she had a whole basket full of it. This thing was chasing her. And all he sees is this gray looking arm come down like that.
Yeah.
And then go back into the trees. And she had like literally fallen out of the woods. He goes, a little like the woods just threw her up, And he goes, I go over there. And I'm like, well, are you okay? What's going on? She's like, I just got attacked by this creature. Now, here's the thing. He's helping her up. He's carrying her back into the house, helping her. Walker comes out, just drinking a beer, and she walks right by him, and he just looks at him and gives him a look like, why are you touching my girlfriend? And he looks at Walker, and he's like, well, she fell. He goes, yeah, that's what they want you to believe. Okay. And he's all like, okay. So next night, this was 2 nights after the second time he had seen, what's-his-face, Mark, just staring out the window. He's like, I go downstairs. He goes, and it's at 3 a.m. Once again, I keep getting up at that time. I don't know what was going on. And I said, Mark, what's going on? He's like, shh. He goes, look there. He's like, do you see it? And he gets down and he's like, what are we looking for? And he's like, he's thinking he's going to see that pale crawler looking, bug looking creature again. And he's like, he sees this gray creature. He's like very, very weird looking body. Like these, when it was on all fours, he goes, the arms he called them arms. He said it was crawling and it would come to the edge and it would stare at him and the dog would growl and whimper. And Mark's dog was just like not having it, didn't want anything to do with it. And then they had another dog named Chewy that was like this little, nothing dog, mutt, that Walker's girlfriend had brought. He's like, and so Mark's just like, it's right there. And he goes, he lifts up his rifle and he goes, I see it every night. He goes, but every night it comes closer and closer to the house.
Hmm.
And he's like, he goes, all I saw was the front of this gray creature. It looked kind of wolf-like. He's like, I didn't get to see the back end of it. I didn't know what it looked like. I just saw the front end. I didn't see the back. I didn't know. He's like, and so he goes, I was so delirious. I said, look, I'm going to go to bed. I don't know what this thing is. And he goes, as he's walking to go up the stairs, Mark turns and goes, we're all doomed. And he goes, okay. He walks up the stairs. He goes, the next morning, he's like awake, drinking coffee. He made some eggs. And he's sitting there and he's like, tells Walker at the breakfast dinner table, he says, hey, man, I didn't mean to grab your girlfriend. I wasn't trying to be. She fell. And he goes, no, she just conveniently fell so you could pick her up and help. He goes, I don't blame you. I blame her. And and that's when he tells Walker, he says, look, I don't know what the hell's going on here, but I've seen 3 different creatures. 3 different creatures here. He's like, and I don't know what to think. The one of them looks like wolf-like, One of them looks like this crawling, white humanoid-looking creature. And I've seen Bigfoot, just obviously just quintessential Bigfoot, my words. But he said it's a Bigfoot. And then Walker goes, you're crazy. He's like, and Mark is freaking crazy, and y'all are all crazy. I don't believe any of this. Hang on one second, folks. So he says, I couldn't believe it. I was like, dude. So Leon tells me this. Ian, at this point, had only seen the Bigfoot-looking creature, that chocolate-colored creature that he hadn't seen since. He didn't see the pale crawler one. He'd only seen it one time over there in Virginia. But this was distinctly different. Now, one of the things that Ian did tell me, though, he said, dude, I asked him the question. I said, do you think that the fact that you could see this thing and you saw it in Virginia and now you're seeing it again over here in Canada? And he goes, absolutely think it's connected. He's like, because this time, he goes, I was out in the woods on one of the ATVs and I was going out deep so I could go hunting. The moose weren't really coming close at that point, and it was late summer and I needed to get some stuff for the larder. And so he goes, I go out there. He goes, and you have to cut the hide off of these moose. He said, and they're covered in ticks. He said, it's so gross, man. They're just covered in ticks. He goes, and so, these ticks, and you have to cook the meat really well. And we came up with a system, to take these moose down and basically tenderize the meat. He goes, we had this whole system put together. And he's like, it would have been heaven, being off the grid, just living like that. He goes, if you weren't around these weird beings, whatever they were. And he said, when they told him about me, and he was like, I had to tell Leon, we had to talk to you because of the stuff that we had talked about, up in Saskatchewan. And so that's kind of, like I said, that's how it came about. But Leon was like very forthcoming about the different creatures. Now, this is the other one that Ian saw. He saw the same pale humanoid creature, but he said that this thing was crawling, like it was just like the trees were so thick, it was just crawling from tree to tree to tree and moving video game like, his words. And it was catching up to me. It was moving sideways so fast. He's like, and I look up and I see this like kind of, the way it was like glimmering, shimmering, whatever. And I told him, I said, yeah, that is the cloaking, what they call that. That's like it's a weird thing they do. And he says, yeah, it's bizarre, dude. He goes, I don't even know what that is. He's like, but I'm just hauling ass on that ATV. He goes, and then he goes, I get thumped. Like this thing gets ahead of me. He goes, and a tree branch comes down because this creature did it. and it whacked me in the head because I was going so fast. I thought I had ducked enough, but it caught me. The helmet saved me, and he goes, but I fell backwards, and the ATV just wrecks into the brush. He goes, and I sit up and I can see, even though I got whacked in the head pretty hard. He goes, I wasn't unconscious. I mean, I could see the cabin. It wasn't that far away. And he goes, and I took my helmet, I lifted it up the shield, which was cracked. He goes, and I started screaming because I could see Walker and Leon. They were there like working. And I was screaming, hey, help, help. He goes, and this thing got down and it dropped down. And he goes, and then I saw it like kind of like liquid, boom. And then it just formed. And he said at that point, he goes, I saw it like just kind of become humanoid shape and walk over to me. He's like, and I thought this thing is going to eat me. It's going to eat me. It's going to kill me. Now, here's the other thing, too. And I asked him this question. I said, some of the people who've told me about this area is up there, they said that they saw signs of these creatures having preyed on other animals. Did you find anything like that? He says, no, I didn't. I never saw anything like that. He's like, but Walker and his girlfriend did. He goes, and so did my sister. They found signs of predation, animals being like bones and things like that. They didn't see wolves or bears or anything like that. It was just these weird little creatures, not little, but, and he said, this thing's like, 7-8 foot tall creature, big, massive. He goes, and then I hear this crashing coming from the other side of me. He goes, and I look back and behind me and I see these two large, what can only be described as like Neanderthals. This is his words, right? Cavemanish looking, but furry, he goes, I don't know how to describe it. And I said, so I asked him, and I didn't want to lead him, but I said, if you had to describe it, would you say they were more primate looking? Or, and I've asked this many times to people, or would you say they were more like cavemanish looking? He said, caveman looking, but mixed with like a primate. And he was like, probably a Bigfoot. I said, yeah, the Bigfoot. And he's like, and they came out. And he goes, and I got the distinct impression that they didn't like each other. So then I looked up and this thing was gone. And I heard like it was moving. Because the whole time when it moves, he said, when this thing moves, he goes, and this is when Walker finally saw something, it was that. And he said he was right there by the tree line and he had a hammock he set up. And his girlfriend told him, there's weird stuff out here. I wouldn't put that hammock right there. And he's like, I don't believe you. I don't believe any of it. And I think Leon's full of crap. Eventually, Walker and Leon got into it because Walker's mind seemed to kind of go to a dark place and it never really returned. And so he's like, I don't believe you. And then Walker came running back up to the house, left his book there, which disappeared. The book disappeared. And so he goes back in the house and he tells them exactly what he heard. And he heard this like when this thing moves from tree to tree, it sounds like a real quick like that. Now he goes, Ian told me, he goes, I didn't hear that or notice it until I had fallen off of that ATV, knocked off of it. Then I heard that noise, and then it was, when it was moving around. I asked him too, have you ever heard like the popping noise? He said, no, he didn't hear that. But one night when they were all up and they'd been drinking and having a good time, partying, whatever, there was a girl that from the closest town or whatever that's Mark started kind of having interest in. And he ended up like, she came out there and she brought her friend who she introduced to Ian. And Ian and her hit it off. And so he ended up kind of going out and talking to her and they became friends. And the girls in that town were outnumbered by the guys like 10-1. He goes, but she liked me. And he goes, and amazing. He goes, I never thought that I would, find somebody out there, in the middle of nowhere. He goes, but she really liked me. He goes, and we started hanging out more and more and more. And next thing you know, she's pretty much just staying out there with me. And she was staying with her mother and her stepdad at that time because she was going through a bad divorce. She's several years older than Ian, but she was very beautiful. He goes, and she looked younger than me because I'm very weathered, And he's like, but she looked younger than me. She's like several years older than me. And so she had the divorce, went through whatever, and she had a son with this other guy. The son ends up, she fights for custody for this kid for 2 years. And then eventually she gives up the custody to this guy, and then she gets visitation, right? Because she wanted to move, and the child was not going to be whatever. So they moved, and it was kind of one of them things where, according to Ian, like the dad and his mother had poisoned the child against the mom.
Mm-hmm.
And so he's like, she's like, this kid's never gonna, whatever. So she was pregnant with Ian's kid, and that's when they decided to leave. She eventually moved. And so the child pretty much didn't want anything to do with her until years later, when he was old enough to make his own choices. He was a teenager, and he came to stay with them. Then he didn't want to go back. So now he's living with them in Virginia. And he's a pretty good kid. He's a really good kid. I like him. He goes, he's like a son. He's like, he sees his dad for what he is, and that happens. It happens. But he said that, this kid had some weird stuff. When he came out there to visit them a couple times, he saw this gray looking creature with the gray fur that looks just like a werewolf. It looked just like a wolf-like creature. And it was crawling up to the house. And when he was on the porch one day with the two dogs, the dog started growling, and he goes, and then the one dog was the little mutt. I don't remember the dog's name, but it was pulling him by his pant leg. And he looks and he sees the thing, put its hand up on the porch. He goes, and I got the impression that it was going to unalive me, like real bad. Like it's what it was doing. It was trying to get him, the child. And so he ran inside the house. And that's when Ian was like, dude, this thing's coming after our kid, So he told his girlfriend, he's like, dude, this is bad. I don't think your son should be out here. And he was determined after all the work they did, because I asked him this, and people ask me this all the time. Why did I stay living in a haunted house? You put down roots, and you put all this blood, sweat, and tears into your life. I mean, I stayed because it was cheap,
Yeah.
I mean, and I wasn't there a lot. I was gone a lot. So, but these people, they put their everything into this. This was going to be their life.
It's like you want that to be your home.
No, I mean, 2.5 years later, he has to leave.
Yeah.
And now even to this day, he still has that property.
Mm-hmm.
And for years and years and years, you try to sell it. Nobody wanted it out in the middle of nowhere. They want to be around internet and things like that.
Yeah.
Nobody wants to live there. They want it there to be seasonal. So he got a few lowball offers for somebody to buy it over the years, but he was just like, I just hang on to it, Now it's worth more, but he's renting it out, for the summer. Like right now as we speak, there are people renting it out. They rented it out for Memorial Day weekend. And there are people that'll rent it out all summer. He goes, and it'll go on until September, October, and then it'll peter off, by November. But he said, dude, it's a crazy thing. He's like, this place sits desolate in the wintertime. He goes, but then you'll go there and open it up, in early spring, like late March. He's like, and you'll see that things have been moved around. You know what I mean? Like something was there.
Yeah.
He's like, I tried putting up cameras. They never work. They always get shut down.
Mm-hmm.
He's like, and then this kid keeps telling him that there's this wolf-like creature out there. So Leon had seen different types of creatures. Now, Ian never saw this, but Leon did. Leon's like now convinced that because of that butterfly-looking thing he saw that melted into that globe. He calls it a globe. I said, Leon, you're stupid. That is an orb. He's so freaking ignorant, man.
Dumbass. Everybody knows that.
It's dumb, man.
Apparently you don't.
Dumb people, man. Just dumb.
I shouldn't even finish his story just for that.
I'm gonna leave. We're out here. Goodbye. So I'm kidding, folks. I'm really joking. They were actually very pleasant to talk to. But Leon told me, he says, dude, I saw 3 different creatures. 3 different types of creatures. He's like, I saw Bigfoot creatures. He's like, I saw, Ian saw this Bigfoot-like creature that was like this chocolate colored creature, whatever. And then he saw that creature that was similar to it, but he didn't think it was the same one. And then a black one, which is probably the same creature that Leon saw. And then he saw that weird pale thing, but he never saw the werewolf-looking creature. But Leon did. And Leon's like, dude, he's like, when I tell you He's like, I saw a wolf-like creature. I saw Bigfoot, for sure, Bigfoot, absolutely 100%. He goes, and then this pale grasshopper-headed looking creature.
The hell is with that property?
Yeah. Well, Ian, it's weird though, because Ian did not share. Here's another weird thing. He did not share to me what Leon told me. He says, me and Beth both saw the same grasshopper-headed creature. So did Walker's girlfriend. She saw two different creatures, the wolf creature and that. She never saw the Bigfoot. But he said that they all agreed that it was insectoid except for Ian. This is what Ian told me, and this is very interesting. Ian said that is a mask. And I was like, what? And he said, okay. He goes, let me explain to you. He goes, when I saw this thing, he's like, it lifted its hands to its head and it pulled up. It was starting to lift up something. And I saw this black, weird, like it looked almost like a beard, but it was like little tentacles that were coming down. And he goes, what the freaking hell am I looking at, dude? He goes, and when those two Bigfoot came, these like big, large, hairy looking creatures came walking up, like they looked like they wanted to unalive this thing. He's like, the thing pulled its helmet back. Now he says a helmet. And then it kind of went like he heard a noise, like a click, not a pop, but just like a click, you know. He goes, and then it was gone. He goes, I was looking back and forth and I'm thinking, are these guys going to eat me? Is that going to eat me? And he's like, dude, when you talk to those neighbors, the Scottish people, there was like several of them that were there hanging out at that big cabin on the other side. We invited them over for a cookout. So we all had this big cookout. He's like, and they brought the most disgusting meat you could ever imagine. He goes, it was elk. But he goes, they had this big elk leg, you know, whatever, and they cooked it horribly. It was horrible. He goes, it just tasted like Worcestershire sauce.
Probably have to drown it in that stuff.
And I'm like, dude, that's the worst part of the whole story. Like, you just mustard and Worcestershire. That's you add that to barbecue sauce now. Take some Stubbs, spicy, mix it together. Stubbs barbecue sauce. That would be, yeah. But he goes that they used some kind of salty rub that was horrible. He kept saying it was terrible. And so he said, dude, we're over there and we're having this little get together, whatever. He goes, and one of those Scottish people's kids or young guy, whatever. He said that they had this werewolf-like creature that they believed stalked them when they were living in Scotland. And so they started talking about this. And he said they lived in northern Scotland, real rocky, ugly, dirty looking climate or whatever. Dirty is, I don't mean dirty. I mean like very earthy like climate, you know. And he said that, dude, they were talking about how bitterly cold it was up there. So this was nothing to them. They were going to be gone by the time that this, you know, whatever. And they didn't live up there anymore, that they grew up there in the Scottish Highlands, right? And they said that one of their relatives had died. This is a weird story because they all started talking about this werewolf creature, right? Because people were seeing it. He said, so we started talking. We're having like these little festivities, whatever. And he goes, it's weird. We're Americans, right? So it was July 4th, you know, and so we invited them over for fireworks and blah, blah, blah. We didn't have any, though. We just shot guns. So he goes, we shot guns. He goes, we had 2 Roman candles. They were flares. He goes, so they were just playing around, you know, just July 4th. Fireworks. And those Scots were like, cool, July 4th. And it's funny because they're all Americans in Canada celebrating July 4th with Scottish people.
Just an excuse to shoot guns.
It's just life.
And drink.
Yeah, basically. And so I told him, I said, I know, believe me, when I'm growing up as Hispanic, there's every holiday is just an excuse to shoot guns and drink. And so that's pretty much it. So they show up there and they're having a great time. They start talking about this creature and they said, well, it was one of our relatives. And they're like, what? So here's this weird story. Here's a story that he was told while he was up there. And he said, we were talking about this creature that Ian says, I never saw it. Leon did. He saw it with Mark, and Mark was starting to kind of lose it a little bit, but he took off for a couple of weeks, came back, got his head clear, and then they all sort of witnessed the downward spiral of Walker, who became kind of deranged and went into a weird sort of whatever psychosis. They were supposed to all leave for the winter, just leaving him, his sister, and what's his face, Leon. They were all supposed to just be just them. But he goes, everybody but Walker pretty much stayed over the winter. And then Walker, this is really weird. Like they go out into the woods, middle of the winter, whatever, and they find him. He's there. And he's like staying out in the woods. And apparently, like he had dug a big hole into the ground, is what they told me. Really weird. They dug this big hole. Yeah. And he was staying down in this.
He's just sleeping down there?
Yeah. Like several feet into the ground, and he had like wood and stuff around it. And it was, he was living out there like a maniac. Like, dude, I'm telling you, it was like 20 below and he's out there, but he's underground. Like he's dug this 8-foot tunnel down into the ground. And they were just like, what is wrong with this guy? Now he is ex-military, right?
Mm-hmm.
And supposedly, according to him, he was special forces. He was like, he had done a bunch of, but they were just like, yeah, he was a weird guy. He was a really eccentric guy. But those Scottish people like Walker, they didn't like him. They were just kind of like, eh. So Walker had gone onto their property one time and just took some food out of their larder. And they were planning on staying there, up until the winter. But then they decided to go ahead and stay there during the winter because they had all this extra food. And they liked it. They said, what's the difference between being in Northern Scotland and being here? So they just decided to stay. So they were the closest relatives or neighbors they had. He's like, and it was really like that first winter, there'd be snow drifts. I mean, just like all day long, you couldn't see. It was like a whiteout. And it was dangerous just going like 30 yards to the larder to get food and bring it back into the house.
Mm-hmm.
The house was nice and warm. It was well insulated. They had a wood burning furnace and all this stuff. They had a nice stove that they used. Both sides of the house, they had a fireplace. And so it kept everything warm. It was amazing. And he said that it was nice. He's like, but we had this weird thing going on with Walker who was just losing his damn mind. So then he takes off one day going out into the woods and he says, I'm going to walk to town, which the closest town was like 40 miles or something. And then they're like, what? And he's,
what the hell are you talking about?
Breath smells of whiskey. And they're just like, whatever, dude. So nobody tries to stop him because by this point he had gone into madness, because he started watching these creatures at night with Mark.
Mm-hmm.
Mark says, I'm going to get my head clear. He goes, I'm going to go and visit my family in Northern California for a couple of weeks. I'll be back. So he goes and does that, and then he returns right before the winter hit really hard. And at that point, he was like, Walker has got to go. Him and Walker got into it. Then Leon knocked Walker completely unconscious right there on the porch. He just knocked him right out of his boots. Leon's a big guy. He's like 6'5", 285 pounds.
Yeah.
Solid muscle, dude. I mean, the guy is just a beast. So this dude starts, with him, and Walker is not a big guy. And Mark and him were really good friends. But by this time, Walker had accused Mark of trying to get with his girl. So then he started hitting on Mark's girlfriend and saying that he was going to get him back. And he's just like,
jeez,
what are you doing? Like, why are you doing this? So he started messing with all the women, and acting really weird. He went in behind Ian's girlfriend and like tried to get inside the bathroom with her and corner her. And she's just like, you better get the hell out of here, So then he leaves, he goes back out, and then he threatens her and tells her, you better watch your back, B word. And she's like, oh, really? So then she kind of makes a stink, whatever. And she's like, well, what's up, And so everybody had to like get this guy under control. And then he would go to sleep and he would talk in his sleep and he would wake up. And then at one point, he sat up in the middle of the night laying, and because now there were all the bedrooms were finished. There were 4 bedrooms and a loft. So they had 4 bedrooms and a loft. It was big. They had expanded it, And he said, dude, this guy wakes up sleeping on the couch in the living room because he would refuse to go sleep in the room because the voices were messing with him. So then he wakes up and then he's just like screaming. Everybody in the whole cabin woke up. They come out and he's talking in, what Leon said was tongues.
Mm-hmm.
He said, when we were young and we go to church, people they would grab snakes and talk like, do that kind of stuff at our church. He's like, I never bought into it. I always thought it was ridiculous, but my granny would put a switch to me if I told her otherwise. And he goes, and finally one day I just said, look, after church, I blurted it out. I was like 15. I said, this is crazy. I'm not going back. And they're like, well, if you don't want to go back, don't go back. You're going to burn in hell, boy, And he said, okay, fine. I'm going to go listen to Judas Priest now, AC/DC, whatever. Mm-hmm. And so he took his cassette tapes and he would hide them over at Ian's because his grandmother, by his own admission, was obsessed with Satanism, it was so, oh, you're a Satanist, you're into Satan, whatever. You're not part of the church. You're not doing church once. We're going to do, we're going to get you, blah, blah, blah. So he was just like, dude, I can't deal with that all the time. Coming in and raiding my room and grabbing my, my Metallica and Anthrax albums and stuff. He said, so I just started like hiding my cassettes over at Ian's house. He's like, I spent most of my time over there anyway. He was like my brother. He goes, I couldn't handle Granny. She was just an obsessed, annoying, whatever.
Yeah.
He goes, she made me hate Christianity. He's like, and then I went back. I started going back to church, because Ian and them were a little more conservative, with a little more, less whatever, wild about it.
Yeah.
They had a Baptist church they went to. And so he said that they were like, once Granny died, he goes, the family went back to normal, stopped with this obsessive, compulsive, crazy, whatever. But he was saying that he saw some weird things, like his grandmother's eyes turn green sometimes. This was weird, dude. He said it was like weird. Her eyes would be blue. She'd get real pissed off, and then her eyes would be green for like 2 days. Weird stuff, dude. And he was telling me, he was telling me all this weird stuff. Like one time there was this, like when she was asleep, she had one of those like vapor machines or whatever, like the Vicks vapor or whatever.
Oh, like the humidifier?
Yeah. And he goes, I was already in my like 20s, 30s, whatever. He goes, and I went over there and I was helping her because she was sick. And he goes, that's how she was breathing. But she had emphysema because she'd been smoking, like,
Mm-hmm.
And he goes, I just saw this weird, like white, then turned to like green and then black, like vapor come out of her mouth. And it was like swirling around. He goes, I'm like, what in the hell is that? And he goes, so anyway, Walker wakes up, starts screaming and acting crazy. And he's talking in this weird language. It's like Leon described it as tongues. Like his grandmother would do that.
Mm-hmm.
And he thought for sure, 100%, he believed his grandmother had been possessed multiple times in her life. She would just go like, and her eyes would move and weird and look like they would go like into the head this way, opposite directions and stuff. Yeah, dude, freaky stuff. And he believed that it had something to do with their church because he believed that their preacher was by his own admission, a Kenneth Copeland type guy.
Oh, yeah.
Because he asked me if I knew who Kenneth Copeland was, and I'm like, nope, describe him to me. Who is this man? And he goes, you don't know who Kenneth Copeland is? I said, yes, I know. I'm just being facetious. I do. And he's over there, cut your hand, drink the blood. Like, what in the heck is this guy's deal? Like, what are you doing? You claimed you went to hell. I mean, did you not learn anything? Did you learn that you didn't want to go back? I mean, that's what the one takeaway would be like, I don't want to go back to hell. Nope, I never do. Never, ever, ever am I going to go back to hell. Let's not do this. No, he just like wants to, he's sprinting back there.
Yeah.
He's jogging. He's like Forrest. He keeps running,
But the private jets and the 501c3 tax breaks are just too good.
It is.
Just can't.
It's like a Popeye's chicken sandwich on steroids.
Just can't stop.
Good. Can't stop. Won't stop. He's like Diddy over there. There we go with the 666 again. Look, we're talking about Kenneth Copeland and Diddy, and look what happens.
Oh yeah.
There we go. I bet Kenneth Copeland calls him up, and he's like, yo, Sean. But you can't guess who this is. And he's like, is this Kenny? Yeah, you're right. It's me. I got 2 full crates of baby oil. I mean, you're freak offs. I want to go. And Diddy's like, the boat is full. We're going to go to Epstein's. You have to fly over there.
We already got John Hagee on the boat with us too. So,
and Joe,
I mean, you know what I'm saying? You're just going to have to work that out.
Y'all going to have to work that out. Yo, white boy preachers going to have to work that out.
Yeah.
And so, Kenneth is probably like, oh, it's another freak off. My master will be most displeased. He wants to use me as a vessel. You just know he's doing that.
Yeah.
You know he's doing that. And then Diddy calls him back and says, hey, you know what? Osteen ain't going to go. You go ahead and just get on board. You know what? I think it'd be cool to watch you in the freak off. Let's see how you do. I know them demons be working through you, man. I know you could do it. If anybody could do it, you could do it. You've been to hell, so yeah. So I think when he was talking, when Leon was telling me about this weird, like the voices and stuff that he was doing, that it kind of snapped Mark out of it too. Mark was like staring up, looking out, whatever. And once what's his name left, once Walker left, Mark told him, he says, Walker's the one that showed me that creature, which Walker vehemently denied. He's like, he's the one that showed it to me. Here's the weird thing, though. The Scottish people did not like Walker at all. They didn't like him one bit. And one of them got kind of drunk one night. And this guy, McNally was his name, he told him, he says, there's something really strange about your friend. I don't think he's all there. And, of course, Leon, and he's like, this is a big, burly, reddish, blonde-haired, creepy dude that looks like one of these people that lives beyond the wall. My words, you know. Because I told him, I was like, yeah, have you seen Game of Thrones? You know, the guys from He's like, yes, kind of like the red-haired guy. Kind of reminded me of him, but older and meaner. And he goes, I don't want that guy coming around my family. He comes around my family, and it might be a bit of a problem. And then they're all kind of like, and then he's like, but hey, we're all having fun here. It's all good. Don't bring him around. We'll kill him. And he's like, they're like, okay, no problem.
Loud and clear.
So here's the really weird thing about this whole situation. You remember when Walker's girlfriend fell out of the woods?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. She was with her boyfriend. He disappears, and this creature starts following her, and she's like, where did he go? And so he falls. This creature begins to chase her. She hears a laugh coming from in the woods somewhere. This creature's chasing her, and then she falls. She runs through the thickest part of the brush off the trail, gets all scratched up, gashed up, cut up to the point where they thought she might have to go to the hospital. Got some scars, you know. Then Walker comes out of the cabin, and they were like, well, she's like, where were you? He's like, I went around the back. I came back early because you were taking too long. She's like, so you leave me out there into those woods? He goes, you were fine. That thing's not going to hurt you. And she's like, I thought you didn't believe in it. Well, here's the thing. Walker told Mark. They started putting all this together when Walker left, right? He's like, he comes to me one night and he wakes me up and he goes, hey, you want to see something really scary? He's like, go stare out the woods. He goes, watch, something's going to come out of those woods in a few minutes. Then Mark kind of figured it out. He was like, dude, I noticed I would look around and Walker wasn't there. He goes, and so I went to his bedroom and I'm like, hey, walk. He opens the bedroom door and nobody's there. Just his girlfriend sleeping. He's like, oh, okay, whatever.
What the hell is that?
Oh, what is that?
It's like some kind of static interference on the. I heard it on the mixer.
Man, that was weird.
There's nobody in the studio. I mean, in the StreamYard studio, is there?
No.
What the heck was that?
So, anyways, I don't know what that was, but I got to finish here.
Yeah.
So Walker's not there. He's not in the bedroom, right? So what? Leon was up, you know, whatever. Mark told him. He turns around. He tells Leon. He goes, do a head count. And Leon is like, it goes to bed, like, you know. So they're sitting there. He goes, and we're all talking. He goes, the Scottish guy, he doesn't like Walker. He said if he comes around their camp, he's going to shoot him. And that's when, you know, Mark said, I think that's probably justified. And he told Leon, he goes, you remember when I told you to do a head count? He goes, yeah. He goes, Mark was nowhere to be found. When I saw that grayish looking creature crawling around, Mark was not in attendance. How did he know that this creature was going to be crawling around out there in a few minutes?
Yeah, that's true.
Right? Mark was also the only one that was not afraid of the Bigfoot. He was not afraid of this, whatever that alien looking, I say alien grasshopper guy. I don't know what it is. The alien creature that was roaming around out there, coming up to their camp. Never did anything, but scared people. And you got to remember too, like Walker was not afraid at all. He would go out there and just, you know, and then he dug out a little weird,
like a foxhole or something.
yeah. And when they saw him, his fingernails were dirty, like there was all this dirt and stuff underneath them, and they think that he may have dug it out with his hands. In the middle of the winter, a few times they saw this gray werewolf-looking creature. And they would shoot at it and it would run back into the woods. This happened to a few different people out there, except for Ian. Ian was the only one that didn't really see it. And then you had this weird dynamic when Ian's stepson came out there, future stepson came out there for a little bit. This thing stalked him. And Walker once made a weird comment, which was toward the end of their stay with them. That he was talking about how human flesh tasted like pork and it was delicious. And they were like, what? And he said, yeah, like suckling pig, like it's younger flesh, whatever. And they were just like, what the freaking hell?
How do you just weave that into casual conversation?
Yeah, he would just say, well, they were eating bacon.
Oh, okay.
And that's what he did. Let me put it in context, but still.
Yeah, I mean,
he's like eating bacon and he's like saying that, and then these Scottish people, when they were there having their little shindig, whatever, and they had a few little get-togethers. They had another one like right around, the end of September. He's like, we were hanging out, and he goes, and it was like the weekend, and we were all like getting together. And we had some of the people from town that had drove all the way out there to come out there and hang out. So there's about 30 people there, 40 people. And he said that we had all kinds of food and all kinds of stuff. And the Scottish dude told him, he's like, where's the weirdo? You heard that, right?
Mm-hmm. Didn't even sound like it was next door. It sounded like it was in the next room.
Mm-hmm. So he tells him, he says, where is the weirdo? What the
and that sounded like it came from outside. The heck is that? Like if there was a room on the other side of this wall, but we're on the second story. And it's an exterior wall.
Okay, well, I don't know what that was. I don't know what that is. I'm not going to speculate.
I want to open them blinds and see a kid scratching at the second story window. Salem's Lot, yeah.
Which is why I don't watch horror movies much. Just don't really need it in my life. So this guy, he says, he goes, dude, he goes, where is the weirdo? Like and he's like sitting there like picking his nails with a big old knife. And they're like, yeah, he's gone. And they're like, they look at each other and he says something to his son-in-law in Gaelic. And Ian's like, what was that? And he goes, well, we had a relative member like him, went feral, kept coming back, stealing things that weren't his. When he's talking like this, him and Leon are looking at each other like, okay, this dude's the only one that kind of creeps him out a little bit. They're just like, not like creepy in the way that Ian said it too. He's like, don't get me wrong. He's not like, we don't think he's a psychopath, but like if you wrong this dude, like he's going to like cut your flank open, dude, and like move in. You know what I mean? Like that's just the kind of guy he seemed like he was. He says, if that guy comes up to our cabin again, wolf or not, I'm going to take him down. And they were like, wolf or not? Like, what is he talking? So later on in the night, Heather, that's one of the girls that was Walker's, she goes out there and she says, hey, why did you refer to him as a wolf? He goes, because he's moving around as a wolf. This has happened before to our family. He's like, this thing takes over these people and they want to eat people. He's like, it goes back like probably 100 generations to the first people that ever lived in my land. The freaking heck is that? And he says it goes back 100 generations. He's like, these people are taught to do vile, foul things by these spirits of the forest. He goes, and then they hunger for human flesh and they become a wolf. Like he told her this. Mm-hmm. And he's like, Walker. He's like, what's his real name? And she's like, says his real name, like his first name. Walker's his last name. And he's like, no.
First name Skin.
Turns out she did a little looking into him. after the winter and all this weird stuff happened, and they found him out there in the middle of nowhere. He had been turned over to the Mounties because he had supposedly attacked and assaulted one of the younger people from those Scottish peoples, whatever, and they'd been out there looking for him.
Mm-hmm.
So that person pressed charges on him. The Mounties came and picked him up. His name wasn't Walker at all. No. His last name was like Stevens. And he was not like, they don't even know where that name Walker came from or why he chose it.
It's a tongue-in-cheek thing.
Mm-hmm. That's what I think. He said that his mother was native, and we found out, according to her, she says, yes, his mother was half native. He was a quarter, whatever. They met him in the logging camps, and he was basically like from Michigan. Now it's over there.
Yeah. It keeps moving. From like behind us to next door
What
to
we're talking
on the
about, this is
exterior
weird.
wall.
Things are weird over here. Next time we get a guest inside the studio, we need to sit here and let them ask them if they hear this.
Yeah, because I think sometimes like what we hear on the stream, they don't hear that on their end. Like if they're watching on YouTube, they probably don't hear it very well. But
and
like,
we're not doing this for effect either. I
No.
promise you that. I'm trying to tell the story.
No, yeah, because it keeps interrupting the story. So I mean, like it's not for like effect. It's not like it's adding to the story. It's actually interrupting.
Yeah, it's just annoying.
Yeah.
Mm. So, anyways, this guy, he claims that he's from Michigan. And of course, his friend Mark was like, well, we're not best friends. Of course, Walker told them that he was their best. He says, Mark's my best friend. And Mark's like, I don't really know the guy that well. I met him in the logging camps up in Alaska. He's like, we weren't like best friends. He was just a hardworking guy. He goes, but come to think of it, when we were in the camps in Alaska, one of the reasons why, remember I told you they hated Alaska?
Mm-hmm.
There was some sort of mutiny at that camp there too. And Walker was at the center of it. Caused a lot of problems and turned people against each other and had everybody freaked out. And people were claiming that stuff was being stolen at night and that there was this weird, they claimed that they saw this weird creature roaming around out in the woods, coming up to the freaking camp. Coming to the edge of the woods, people were seeing it. Now, Mark said he never saw it. But he said that Walker did the same thing when he was up there in Alaska, telling him, and told Leon this too, like, look, there's something crawling around there. They looked, they didn't see it, and they just went to sleep because, they're logging, you're too tired to stare at whatever.
Mm-hmm.
But when you're up there, you're just helping remodel a house. You're not as tired. There's several people there, and you're looking out the window, and he goes, and Mark goes, it was mesmerizing watching this creature move around. He's like, and I had my gun there. He goes, but it never came too close. It just kind of did what it did. He's like, and most of the time it was just like moving around, going back in and out of the woods and just whatever. And he's like, and I don't know why I was so taken by it. He goes, after the first time I saw it, I should have been like, damn, this is a horrific thing. Why am I looking at this rotten looking evil creature? It looks evil. He's like, but I felt like it was my job to keep watch. He's like, and then finally this thing came up to the window one day and it was staring at him with human-like eyes. And he goes, I was like hypnotized by it. He goes, and he told Ian, he goes, and Leon, he goes, it was hypnotic watching this thing. He goes, and I almost felt like I recognized this guy. He goes, and it was like, and he says this guy, like it was somebody he knew. And he's like, then I come to think of it, he goes, it did look like Walker, like his eyes, in the eyes. And it was talking to him and telling him to come outside all the time. Come outside, come outside. And he's like, I'm going to show you something. He goes, I don't want to be out there. And he goes, and when I leveled my gun at him, he backed up slowly and then got down on all fours and ran back into the woods. And this thing would come back out periodically throughout the winter. And of course, this dude gets into it with one of these teenagers from the the other camp, you know,
Mhm.
and they were very upset. And they came over there and they asked him where Walker was, where he was. And they told this guy, they're like, we don't know. He took off into the woods. And that's the patriarch Scottish dude was like, yeah, I bet he did. I bet he did. And they're like, you know, he was upset with them. He goes, you guys allowed this snake, you know, to be in your midst. He goes, I don't trust any of you, if your judgment. And then he was like, I think you're good guys. You're good kids. He goes, but how could you let a guy like that around you? He goes, I warned you about him twice. And he was very adamant that he wanted this guy and he was going to do something really bad to this dude. And he says, and I got something for him too. And he shows them a pouch. And in the pouch were these, you know, it was buckshot. And he shows it to him. He lays it right there on the table. They had a little table right there on the deck.
Mhm.
And he said it was silver. And he says, I got something for him. He's like, no, I'm not going to shoot this whatever. Creatures are out there running around, the Bigfoot, whatever. He's like, but this guy's not one of them. And I hope they get him and tear him apart. Well, it's better than me. I'll do it myself. He's like, I told you, we've dealt with this before. A relative did this stupid thing. What he told them, in particular, Heather, Walker's girlfriend, and Leon, they were outside talking, and his girlfriend. And he told those three people, and he told them, he says, this thing is not a man. It moves around like a man. He's like, but he's possessed of evil. When someone like that turns where he was from originally, he said, dude, these people, you don't, their loved ones, they don't get it. They're gone. It's kind of like the Wendigo.
Mhm.
You know what I mean? So Leon, when he's telling me this, he says, dude, I literally saw 3 different creatures out there. One, I saw the Bigfoot. You know, I know that they were real. He's like, I saw the weird insectoid looking whatever that was that Ian claims is an alien, whatever. He's like, and then I saw this werewolf looking creature on more than one occasion. He's like, now I don't know what a dog man, the guy said dog man, whatever. He's like, I don't know what that is. And you know, he's like, and he's like, and growing up in Virginia, he didn't, like where he was from, they didn't have a name for that creature. Like there weren't people going around saying, we saw a dog man, werewolf.
Yeah.
He's like, that was never even uttered ever. It was just Bigfoot. Everybody thought it was Bigfoot. He's like, but looking back on it, he said there might have been this witch that lived down the road that would turn into a wolf or a wolf-like creature, shaggy, dog-like creature, because everybody was like seeing it, and then it would chase people's pets and stuff. And then this woman ended up with someone's cat and basically tried to ransom it. That was a whole weird story. And they were just like, pay me $200, I'll give you your cat back. Well, how'd you get it?
Yeah.
You know? So he goes, maybe that, because that's the closest thing I could kind of, only after I dealt with this weird guy, whatever he was. And so at the end of all this, I told Leon, I said, do you believe, and I asked him independently of Ian, I was like, do you believe that was he a werewolf? And I said, he goes, and I said, let me start over. I'm going to ask it again. And I said, just answer quickly. Don't think about it. And I said it again. I said, do you think he was a werewolf? He said, yes, real quick. There you go. And then he kind of laughed. He goes, we didn't give me time to think about it. I was like, because you'll talk yourself out of it. Go with your gut and your first instinct and tell me what that first instinct is.
Yeah, you want to rationalize it.
So we got on the phone with a 3-way with Ian and Ian's girlfriend, who was there during most of this, not all of it, during that first year. She was on the phone. She was right there with him. You know, they were talking on speaker. And I said, let me ask you guys. There was 4 of you, because it was Leon's girlfriend too. It was who was, what's his name's sister. Now, you remember Leon's girlfriend, you know, she's not I mean, that's Beth. That's Ian's sister. She's not gonna just lie for them. I don't believe that. They're not together
Yeah.
anymore. They have children together. But she's still good friends, you know. So they talk. They're friends. They've been friends for a long time. And Ian told me, he's like, dude, that relationship's so weird. It's like back and forth, like, and then they'll take a year off and go, kind of somehow just go back to each other like magnets. You know?
Huh.
Weird.
Gluttons for punishment.
Yeah, but I don't look at that. What is it with YouTube? They love that number.
Yeah.
Like, why y'all doing this, YouTube? Why you got to do this? Why? Because it doesn't say that up there. It just says it right there. You keep it on there as long as you can, too.
Yeah.
And I don't believe that that's what that is. I don't believe that. But anyways, he said that, you know, this whole situation, when we were talking about it years later, you know, this is years later, and we were talking about it, and they said that, yeah, I asked him point blank collectively. I said, I'm going to ask you a question that I asked Leon when I was on the phone with him. And I said, I want you to tell me this. All of you, you know, just say it quickly without really thinking about it. Just say yes or no. And I said, do you think that this man, Walker, was a werewolf? And all of them said yes, quickly. But then Heather balked and not Heather, Beth balked and said, no, yes. And she went back. And I said, there you go.
I was going to say, there's always one.
First answer is usually the right one.
Yeah.
You know, and I the thought of it too, like, you know, when I talk to Ian's girlfriend, now his wife, she had said in that area there was never like any story or anything of a werewolf or anything like that. It was Bigfoot, and there had been people that had seen this pale crawler type thing.
Mm-hmm.
Right. And when we talked to Elisa and them, and that was 100 and something miles away in the other direction, but they claimed to have had this white pale crawler type creature that looked distinctly different than this one. But it was moving around, but it was also furry, almost like a rabbit. So I don't know. You know, the next year comes and there's 4 of them staying out there. Leon's still out there. He's staying out there with Beth. And they had left for part of the winter, and then they came back at the end or at the beginning. They had left, and then they came back and stayed for like 2 months of the cold to help out, you know.
Mm-hmm.
And then they just decided, you know what, it's too much work. It's too much work to stay out here. We don't need to, you know, why are we just struggling out here? See, why does that thing keep going at the top now? It's up to 666. It's doing it again up there.
Just whenever we approach that number and we're about to pass it, YouTube always makes it a point to stop on it.
Stop on it or whatever.
Every single time without fail.
Yeah.
I mean, it makes sense if you look at the logo for the Play Store
Yeah,
app.
let's not even get into it.
Yeah.
Then somebody had said, you know, oh, well, have you noticed how their channel is because they're evil or whatever? I'm like, well, you don't get up into the 600, so you wouldn't know, would you? You've never ever been there. You've never even been into the 4s or 5s. So of course you're going to talk shit and say whatever because you don't know what it's like.
Yeah.
You know, when you start getting 700-800 people in the chat, then you can talk about something. Until then, just shut up. You know. When people talk and they need to shut up. Nobody knows how to shut up.
You're never going to get 600 people on your live stream. Never, ever, ever. It's never going to happen.
Mm-mm. Nope. I don't care who you get on your show. Unless you get like, you know, some major celebrity that people that like that guy follow that guy or that girl, whatever. That's the only way you'd ever do it. So yeah, I don't, you know. So I was just about to ask Andy, but he's indisposed for a moment there. Give me your thoughts, folks, what you think this is. Because the next year after that, they were there, and then they were there for half of the year after, and then they left. And they haven't lived there since. Now, they have gone up there and stayed and visited in the summertime, they've gone up there and stayed, and his stepson and his other two kids, I'm talking about Ian, they've gone up there and they've stayed, and so has Leon and his, because their kids are cousins, and him and Beth, they are separated, of course, but I mean, like I said, they're still friends. They're cordial. Let's put it that way. They can by their own admission, they can stay in the same room together and get along, to a degree. But do you think that that's what this guy was? Now he got arrested, and I don't know. I mean, I don't know. Y'all can give me your thoughts or ask questions if you like. If there's something that I didn't cover, I might remember. There's another creature that I had talked about. I might have talked about it before, but this comes out of India. And some of my friends that are of that persuasion have told me that there's this wolf-like creature that literally is like a wolf, but that it's born a wolf, it lives its life as a wolf, but it can become a man. It can change its shape into a man, and when it turns into a man, it looks very much like a very hairy. It doesn't have the same characteristics as a person. It's almost like it's a like how do you describe it? Like the way they were describing it to me is like it has long limbs and it doesn't look like a person, like a normal person. Yes, a person, but not a person. Does that make sense? But it starts its life out as like this wolf-like creature. And they do look like wolves, but they're not wolves in the way that we think of as wolves. So let's put it that way. And I've had people tell me that. But the ones that have told me that predominantly they're from the Bangalore region of India. So, and I've been told that twice. Two different people, two totally different people when we talk about this subject. One guy I used to go to college with, and the other guy I met through my jeweler who was there one time, and we started talking about all of this stuff, and he was telling me, yeah, that's a thing. So, I don't know. That's interesting. So somebody says that Ravager lizard. I think it's possible underground tunnels of Hollywood where these creatures are coming from, or possible military base releasing these creatures. Yeah. And Michelle says, what happened to Walker? Is he still there at the cabin or in prison? I don't know. I think he's in jail or something. I don't know. He had charges pressed on him. He had an extensive criminal record. He had been arrested in Canada and he'd been arrested in the United States like several times. So I don't know. And Leon says, the closest thing I can compare to old stories about creatures in the Scottish and Irish mountains is a kind of Wendigo. Yeah, mixture, werewolf mixture from hearing childhood stories and two encounters while hunting. Yeah. That's the thing. Because that's what that old guy, McNally, was telling him. Mac was saying basically, look, this creature, it's a person and it gets the hunger. And then it becomes the wolf. And then it walks amongst you. And he's kind of warning them, but chastising them at the same time. That's a good question. Die Guy says, I wonder how old he was. I do too. I wonder, this story really freaked me out. It was intriguing to say the least. And when Anthony named this story, I mean, like, I think, he just kind of put the base, whatever, paranormal entities, whatever, but we really need to put the name up there and change it. Leonie, that's another thing too. I don't think any of them were okay with Bigfoot. None of them really seemed to, they were very uneasy. You know, when Ian, those two Bigfoot creatures kind of went to confront that thing, whatever it was, and they were living on the edge of whatever. And I think they were taking, according to what Leon told us, that they were taking scraps that they were having, like they were leaving stuff out there on the edge of the woods. One of the women was, and these Bigfoot were grabbing them and eating them, and they were leaving them stuff, which was not a smart thing to do, because the next summer they had more problems with those creatures. And in fact, they threw rocks at their cabin one night. Well, a few nights. And then that's when they decided, we're not staying here no more. I didn't get to that part because it wasn't, as interesting as this, but it was good. I had to talk about it. So you got to wonder, like, what is this? What are we dealing with? Is this creature, is this a man? Is he a werewolf, a skinwalker type creature? Or I don't know. I definitely believe that this can happen and this is real. And I think Leon is a very unique person to being able to tell us that he's seen 3 of these creatures. And I had mentioned this on the show like a couple of weeks back about Leon. I was going to tell his story that he had seen 3 different creatures, Bigfoot type creatures, and actually 2 different types of Bigfoot creatures. But he believes that he can see things. Like that's why he could see those entities in that house that Ian and them lived in. One of the most terrifying things that Leon told me about that house too was there was this woman, like there was a female spirit there, and that she was just kind of like, you could see her dress kind of floating, blowing around, whatever. And when she turned around, like her cheeks were like gone, and you could see all of her teeth on either side, but they were jaggedy looking teeth. And she like floated toward him with her arms out, like trying to grab him. And he was a child at that time. He was like 9 years old. So he ran and he hid under the table. And she came around the corner and was like looking. And he said she was just kind of floating like a jellyfish, is the way he described it. And she went into the kitchen and he was just sitting there in the dark, like trying to not be seen. And he goes, I knew when I saw her like start to squat down that she was going to be looking at me. He goes, so I just, and this is going to sound funny. He goes, I was trying to make a peanut butter and jelly sandwich. He's like, and my friend was in the other room, not far away but I was too scared to yell. And so his parents slept upstairs, and they had most of the upstairs. It was a big area up there. It was just their bedroom and like a loft or whatever. He goes, and downstairs was where the kids slept. And he goes, and I wanted to scream so bad, but I didn't wake his parents up, because the downstairs came and then the kitchen was right there to the right, coming out of the hallway. It all kind of intersected right there. And he's like, and I didn't want to wake him up and get his dad and mom upset, He's like, and so I put bread over my face. He said, I took the bread and put it like on my face like this. And he's like, I wanted to poke it into my eyes so I didn't have to see this witch or whatever it was. He goes, and then the table, I heard this. He goes, and I pulled the bread down off of my face and I look, and the table was gone. This creature had upended it. And he's like, and I look, and there's this thing across the room, and it was like staring at me. He goes, and it was just black, but you could see 2 red dots like eyes. And he's like, maybe that's the same creature. It was her, and she became that and started to go toward me. And he goes, and I crawled, and then I got up. He goes, and I ran out of there. He goes, and they had this old basset hound. He goes, and it never moved. It would just lay there when they were kids, and it passed away when they were real young. The parents had it forever, and that thing was running alongside him. And it went into the room where Ian was. And he was like, dude, I told Ian about it. And Ian's like, he goes, I never saw it. He's like, but one time Ian told me he was in the restroom and he heard like his mother talking to him. And she's like, Ian, she's like knocking on the door. She's like, can you let me in? I need to talk to you. And he's like, Mom, I'm using the bathroom, And she's like, oh, okay. She's like, remember, don't be playing, whatever. And she said something really like lewd comment, and he was like, wait, what? He's like, my mother was a prude. She never talked like that. He's like, and then I thought about it, and he was like, wait a minute. He's like, my parents aren't even here. They're at my brother's baseball game. And he was like, and then she goes, knocks again. She goes, I'll be waiting. And he was like, he goes, dude, I sat in the bathroom for like 2 hours. He's like, I tried to get the window open. He's like, but my sisters had been sneaking out of the house. He goes, so my dad had nailed the bathroom window shut. He's like, and I'm like, oh my gosh. He goes, so I'm trying to get out of there. So I'm hiding in the bathroom the whole time. This is freaky, right? So then he says, he goes, my one sister was at school, like they were doing some kind of project or whatever. My older sister, he's like, the two younger ones had gone with my dad and my mom to town. He's like, so I'm sitting there. He goes, and then she says that it was like this. Now I practice this a little bit. I'll try to. The way he did the voice, there was 4 of us all together, 5 of us all together on the phone, right? We're talking, and we were talking about and he did the voice, and the women were like audibly like, ugh. And then Leon goes, dude, that's creepy. And like, but he had seen this thing. Leon had seen it. Ian had never seen it like all the way, right? Thank you for the donation. So he goes, Ian, I'm trying to get your attention. And it was like, and then it was like, like it went like deep like that. Like he started off like, Ian, I'm trying to get your attention. And he's just like, what the freaking heck? He goes, dude, I'm sitting, he goes, I don't have anything but matches and Lysol. He goes, so I'm like ready to spray whatever. He goes, so I go toward the door and I'm like, I don't know what you are, but you better back off, man. I'm armed. And it just started laughing. He goes, I could hear this laughter down the hallway. And I can see this. Look at this. Look at that. It gave me a goose flesh along with the hair standing up. Because when he did that, he's like, that was as close as he could get it. And he goes, and he said, I always feel weird when I talk about having nightmares. Next day, he messages me. He says, I had a nightmare last night. I was like, about the thing. He said, yes. Always have a nightmare about it. He says, so then he sits there like on the ground in front of the tub, just holding this. And he said, he goes, I didn't like sitting on the floor in that bathroom. He goes, there's always like spiders and stuff in there. It was like the old bathroom we had eventually remodel, He's like, but that bathroom was like old, it was crappy, and there was like a hole where they could get in, Yeah. It was like he was like, we went there, we caulked it and everything, tried to get rid of it. And he's like, it was horrible. Like I didn't like sitting on the floor. He goes, we'd seen scorpions and spiders. He's like, and I was sitting there, I didn't give a crap. I was like just worried that, He goes, and then I look and I hear like this kind of jiggling of the door handle. He goes, we had those little, those glass door handles that look like they're like a diamond. Yeah. He said we had one of those. It's like jiggling. They used to use those in the old days. They thought they were pretty or whatever. Never lagged. And he goes, it was like, and then I look and I'm going like, and there was a keyhole. Like there was an old timey keyhole. I know because when I was a kid, we had a house that we lived in Taylor, across the street from the house that you were born at. Well, you were born there, but that was the first house you lived as a baby. Yeah. I remember you being a baby there. And I watched the Super Bowl with your dad that year, the Giants and the Bills. I remember that. Mm-hmm. And it was right after you were born, dude. I remember you were a baby. Mm-hmm. And so the door was jiggling. And he goes, there was a keyhole. He's like, and I just was like, I felt like I was going to pass out. Like there was bubbles in my head. And eventually this thing decided to go away. He goes, and then I just sat there. He goes, and I was praying. He's like, and I was praying, and I was just like, oh my gosh, this is crazy. And then he said that he goes, I hear like the door open, and I hear all this moving around and stuff, And he's like, oh, good, my parents are here. And he heard like the rustling of grocery bags. And his older sister, she's like several years older than him, and she drove. So he goes, and he hears her. So he's like, oh, it's her. It's my sister. So he goes, I'm in the restroom, right? And she's like, oh, okay. And she's like walking down the hallway, and he's worried that there's something there that might try to hurt her. He goes, be careful, there's something in the hallway. And she's like, open the door is like, she's like, unlock the door. So he goes over to the door, and he goes, at the last minute, he's like, I got this weird feeling. He's like, so I went to look down through the keyhole, and when I did, I saw this white, like just white, and I saw it move back. And he was like looking, and there was a dress, like a woman's dress. There was no feet. He goes, and then I look up, and there's like this hand that came through the door. It was like reaching for the doorknob. So like this thing could go through the door.
Well, that's what I found curious. Like,
yeah. So it was trying to reach for the doorknob, and then it just made this laugh. He goes, like, have you ever heard a witch's cackle laugh? Whatever. Mm-hmm. It was crazy. He goes, and at this point, he goes, I was so, like, my mind was so gone at that point. So he tries to he opens the door and it goes back shut. Then he hears his sister saying, stop playing games. And then he backs up and then he goes, if you're my sister, he goes, say, I love Jesus. And she's like, I love Jesus. And then he goes, okay. So he opens the door. He goes, and right then he goes, they look down the hallway and he doesn't see it. Like he doesn't see, but his sister screams and runs. She's sitting there holding eggs in her hand, like a dozen eggs, right?
Mm-hmm.
Drops them all over the floor and runs out into the kitchen. And he looks, he doesn't see it. Because Ian told me, he's like, I never could see it. The other kids could see this thing. I couldn't see it.
Yeah.
He's like, and one time I was in the girls' room. That's his younger sisters, Beth and Lace. He's like, and I was in the room with them, and they were like, it's on the wall. They called him Bubba. They were like, Bubba, it's on the wall. And Ian's like, what is? Where? What? And so they stayed the night there one time when they came to visit. Leon did. Leon is his friend, right? Leon's with Beth, and they stayed the night there at his parents' house. And they sat up late into the night telling ghost stories, mostly about stuff in the house. He goes, and then we hear these footsteps going around the hallway. He goes, so Leon's like, I go into the bedroom and I'll go to sleep to go lay down. I put my boots off, whatever, and I lay down on the bed. He's like, and I'm exhausted. We've been out doing stuff all day. I've been helping my father-in-law, which is Ian's dad. He's like, and I look, and Beth is just like, she's like, oh my God. Oh my gosh. She's like, and he looks, and there's this thing. He can see it, like halfway out the door and crawling on the wall. And with its foot, which looked like these weird, like he's no way to describe. He's like, the foot looked bizarre, like this weird elongated foot. It like stuck its leg out and closed the door with it. Like you could see it like a frog. And he was looking at it, and Beth's like, you see it? He goes, yes, I see it. He goes, we're like in our late 20s, whatever. And he's like, dude, so he tells Ian, he's like, he was on the phone with us. We were talking about it. And he's like, how did you never see it? He goes, well, I saw the arm when it was trying to grab the door. And then, and of course the question came up from Leon. He goes, well, dumbass, didn't you notice if the thing can put its arm through the door, it doesn't need to unlock it,
Yeah.
And Ian goes, I know, it was just terrifying me. It was, he's like, this thing could have came in the bathroom at any time. He's like, but 3 or 4 times, he goes, I did light the match, and once I burned the hand towel. He goes, the fire seemed to make it kind of retreat, and it would go away for a little bit. So he tells his dad and mom this story. They went to go into town one day to eat pizza at this point. He said, my parents were, like I said, he goes, we were probably the wealthiest people in the town or in that neighborhood.
Yeah.
And he's like, and we're not wealthy. He goes, we're poor by American standards, but we have more money than everybody else because both my parents worked and they were more educated. And he said, but anyway, he said, we're at the pizza place. We're having this pizza party for my little sister's birthday. He's like, and it's crazy. My dad, he starts drinking, and he just starts talking about growing up in that house and how he had been attacked by this evil spirit that had covered his mouth and climbed out on top of him and was trying to have relations with him.
Oh, man.
And it was this horrible demonic woman, and her eyes were black. Like just you could see into it. And here's the one thing: his dad was laying there, and his dad says, I remember this. This is him telling the story of his dad. His dad didn't tell me this, but he said when he looked into the eye, one of the eyes, and he was looking at it, he could see space. That's what his dad said. And he's like, what do you mean space? And he goes, like, I could see stars and the sky, whatever, through its eye. Like, that's so weird, right?
Yeah.
Like the cosmos was inside of this being. He goes, and I just laid there. He's like, and I was being like taken advantage of by this female demon. He goes, and finally I screamed. He goes, and my brother came running in there, and Ian's uncle is known as like a big guy. He's a strong guy. He's a football player. Actually ended up playing football, going to Virginia Tech for a little while. And so he went in there, played for the Hokies, I guess, whatever. He runs into the room and grabs what he thought was a woman, but then it was nothing. There was nothing there. he felt like what felt like a rib cage or
Uh-huh.
something, but then it just kind of collapsed and then it was gone. So his brother remembers that very vividly. Their uncle, and he was telling him that. And so it was a very, terrifying house to grow up in, obviously. And there was this female spirit that would go around and harass the men and the girls, but it would try to climb on top of the dudes, man.
Yeah.
But yeah,
That's
it was
gross.
like I guess a succubus
Mhm.
type entity. So that was their stories. That's what they told me. That's that's all I got from them. I mean, there was a few other little things too that now his sister Lace has some crazy stories. She has some crazy stories. She had the eye too, and she could see things. And when she moved away, she lived in Hawaii for a while, and she had some crazy stuff happen in Hawaii. And then when she went back home, she did something you aren't supposed to do. She took a piece of volcanic rock
Mhm.
from the Big Island and
Yeah, that's
she
a
brought
no-no.
it back. And oh boy, she said,
Hmm.
"Dude, have you?" So, according to what Beth was saying on the phone, she's like, "Have you ever heard of these things fighting?" I said, "Yeah." She said, "My sister brought back some rock from Hawaii." She goes, "And I swear these entities were fighting each other." And I was like, well, that's one way. Either that or they just all gang up on you and suck you down dry like a,
Yeah.
like the parasites that they are. But anyways, folks, thank you for tuning in. That's Paranormal Roundtable for tonight. If anybody has anything to say or add to,
Don't take any souvenirs on vacation that don't come out of a gift shop.
yeah. I got to tell Lace's story because I'm going to talk to her next week, hopefully, if I have time. But when she gets back, she ended up becoming a stewardess. So she's traveled all over the place. And so her and her husband, they get like these frequent flyer, whatever they get, like how
Yeah, the
we
miles.
save them. Yeah, but they get them like just for nothing, right? Because she's with an airline.
Yeah.
And so they travel all over the place. And she was telling me about a haunted jet that she worked on, that she was working on, and that weird stuff would happen, at, whatever, thousands of feet up in the air. And then people are like on this plane with like a ghost, which was not.
I mean, there's nowhere to go.
Yeah. Not a friendly thing either. Like you're not finding the friendly skies. She said this thing was not only mischievous, it was evil. It would do things. And she thinks that it caused one man to have cardiac arrest on the plane and they had to give him CPR. And then they had to land the plane like in Denver or something. But yeah, Spirit Airlines, right? But anyway, I'm gonna get her stories too because that's crazy stuff, Like, and when they went back and they told their family was like, well, we're haunted. He's like, I don't think that all that was just, you think some of that was there on that land, but the Walker dude,
Yeah, well,
and telling that story, I was just like, I couldn't wait to throw that curveball at them and be like, hey, what about this? Because I could have just told it the way it was told to me was more like straight up, matter of fact. See, that's why I'm your best storyteller. That's why I got you. I got you. I was like, I wanted to tell it. I was like, oh, hold back. And then it's like this, whatever. And then I get this email from this guy. And he says, if you tell my story, I'm coming after you. And I'm like, what?
It's like the 100th one.
What are you going to do to me? He goes, you have peaches. You just bought them from Fredericksburg.
Not anymore.
I have a special skill. I can eat them all, and you will never touch them. I said, too late. I live with Anthony. He ate them all.
Yeah. Sorry about that, man.
He's like, damn.
Actually, I'm not. But whatever.
Yeah, I've had some people, though. I'm going to tell you all the truth, man. And Anthony can attest to this, and so can everybody in my household, dude. We have gotten stories from people. And then somebody will email us or tell us, you better not tell that story. I'm not even joking.
Yeah.
And if it happened like once, you'd be like, oh, okay. But it's happened multiple times. So I'm like, oh, so I said, so you have access to my email. You can see it. Then why are you not doing more damage? Why are you just threatening me?
Yeah, you get these ominous threat emails.
Yeah, these vague.
And like they think that they're like they're like some super villain from a horror movie or something. like they're that old guy Jigsaw from the Saw movies, like this dark mastermind that like with the dramatic wording. Like, dude, shut up.
Yeah.
Like, you're not that guy. Like, you're just some goober who thinks he's like scary. Who you're the main character of a
That's so
movie that's
funny.
playing only in your head.
Yeah,
dude.
exactly.
Real life is mundane. It's not dramatic most of the time.
They start calling me up, and I'm like, hello, and they're like, Sydney.
Yeah.
He's like, don't tell that story, Sydney. You know what's good for you. And I'm like, are you calling about my warranty on my car again? They're like, yes, let's talk about that. I'm like, I don't need this in my life, right? I have plenty of, all my vehicles have warranties. We're good. We're okay. We're okay. We're going to survive, you know. God is good. If the hail, I went outside because Nellie was wanting to grab a rug and throw it on her. I said, no, you're not going to do that. It's not going to, it's too late. And Anthony had to grab her to keep her head from getting knocked in by the three. The hail was this big, folks. And we go out there. Well, I don't know for sure yet. We got to wait till we can get a really good look, but didn't look like there was any damage. And then my neighbor, who's also does this too, he put on his Facebook, you know, that there was no damage to his stuff. And so I was, wow, maybe we just dodged a bullet, because it went on for a damn good 10 minutes. I mean, it was straight, just sheets of balls of ice.
Everything.
And it was just, we thought it was going to break the glass. When we were driving out of our neighborhood, we saw people's glasses broke. We saw trees snapped. And we're over there where we're at, and it's like, nothing.
Mm-mm.
We're all like, why is everybody all dying? What's the problem? We're just, but it scared those pups, boy.
Yeah.
They were like running up under my legs, and they're like, what is that? What is that? And there's Martis. He's just looking out at it, like observing it. He's like, what is this? This is ice falling from the sky. Such a weird little dude, man. I love that cat. He's amazing. He's the peacekeeper.
Yeah.
When they started fighting Elvira and the puppies, they were playing, whatever. He went over there and got in between them, like, hey.
The mediator.
Calm down. Like he did that with Beans and the pig when they would argue over toys.
Yeah.
The pig, I said, Truffles and Beans, they argue over toys all the time. They're out at the ranch. But they're out there because they're so rambunctious. But Martis got up there and he put his paw on Beans. She's like, what are you doing? He's like, stop it, fried chicken. Stop it. We call it fried chicken. We turn around and the pig's just like, and he just, I'll never forget when Bettina and Maddie first came over. Bettina's like, your pig is good. She's like, he's so cute. He's so weird, goofy.
Yeah.
He's like, she's just looking at me like, who are you? Why in my house?
Yeah.
And she's like, can I feed him? I said, Bettina, give him whatever you want. You want to give him, he'll eat it.
He's one of a kind.
He's a human he's a human. He's a garbage disposal.
Yeah.
He's like a human, but he's so
like
he's
anything
very
except
unique.
Onions.
He won't eat onions and he won't eat bell peppers.
Yeah.
Any kind of peppers,
He will not touch them.
He'll go around them. He will not touch a bell pepper. He won't eat it for nothing. Can get him to eat it. He'll eat anything else though.
Mm-hmm.
Nuts, berries, any kind of meat, doesn't matter. He does a little thing with his nose.
Yeah.
But he's been out at the ranch, man, and so yeah, he's out there, and we have a couple dogs out there, and life is good. It's just hard. It's just hard. We have been having problems at work. We have one site that apparently people go to, and they fall under a spell, and they go to sleep. 7 times now they claim that our guards. I have a hard time believing, especially with at least 4 of those people. I've never had any issues with them. Now all of a sudden they just go to that site and go to sleep.
They're putting knockout gas in the AC duct.
and they leave the comfort of their vehicles to go upstairs to a more uncomfortable place to go to sleep.
Yeah.
And it just so happens that the cleaning lady catches them every time. And I'm like, what? Like, this is not that. And my partner, nice guy. I love him today. He's like my dad, but he's not. I'm sitting there going like, dude, use common sense. How is this even possible? You know, how is that even possible? Doesn't make sense. Like it doesn't add up. Okay. There's no evidence. There's no proof of this. There's no pictures. There's no whatever. But anyway, I got to go deal with that tomorrow early. So pray for me. We can't afford to lose that that account. We just can't. We would be dead in the water, if all these things. And it's a testament to the will of God that He's allowed us to do as well as we have, because we've struggled mightily lately. As of late, we have struggled, man. And I was just getting ready to sell some gold today. I was like, I think it's time. I'm going to sell. And then it bottoms, it drops. And I'm like, you got to be kidding me. I was like, today's the day I'm going to do it. I'm going to get it set up, and I was going to take it tomorrow, but then they went down. So I needed to go back up. But who knows? Yeah, I would set up a camera, but it's not my property. I can't, unless they tell us, hey, we want you to set up a camera. I can't do it. Because I have a hard time believing that. And Maddie, she's one of the people that was accused of sleeping. Were you sleeping, Maddie? Don't be lying. She says such accusations. You were asleep. You and Kiam and Scorpion and Muhammad and who else? Amar. And, who else got accused of it? There was like 7 different accusations. I'm sitting there going like, really? Because all the other accounts combined, we have 2. Like all these other accounts, and that one, we have 7. And Tony got accused of it too. So you're just sitting there going like, wow, that's a lot. That's everybody just goes there and falls under a spell and goes to sleep. Because I worked there one night and I didn't get sleepy. There's a lot going on. I mean, like, why would you be sleeping? It doesn't, if you're going to fall asleep, you probably do it at a construction site, like you're just bored, until it's popping. Somebody's trying to steal, copper wire. But yeah, you just be sitting there like just bored out of your mind. You're not really getting bored. So it just seems kind of weird to me, man. But it's something I got to do tomorrow. I got to do that. I got to do a bunch of other stuff. Got to get going back on the books. We can finish it up, wrap it up, get it done. So we'll be back on Friday? I believe Sibylla Irwin's going to be our guest. We'll have to reschedule Katie sometime whenever her husband is well and he's out of the hospital. Folks, pray for Katie Elizabeth. She's the Lake Champlain researcher. She's been doing it for years and years and years. I've known Katie for a long time. And she's a hell of a researcher. And she's up there at that lake, a lot doing her work. And she has not been able to come the last 2 weeks now. I'm going to be honest, last Friday, it was, for me, it was a blessing because I would have been up here like a zombie. But so, yeah, we're going to have a Sibylla Irwin on this coming Friday. And I don't know how much longer we're going to do Fridays because we get a pretty decent crowd, 400 or 500 people, but it's not like Wednesdays or Sundays or Mondays. Mondays when we have all the people that call in and do whatever. Because Fridays are kind of reserved for like people from the community to come on and talk, and do whatever. And if you guys like the Tuesdays, we'll continue to bring on guests and have them retell their encounters on Tuesdays, unless you want me to change it up. Because I have a whole bunch of people that I need to record with. And if you guys like the guests, then we'll do that. Because I'm giving you the option to tell me what you want. Because the people from Spotify, they're just the people from Spotify. They like us, but they ain't us. They don't come to YouTube. They don't participate in the chat. And there are tens of thousands of these people that only listen to the podcast.
Yeah.
And they do not participate with what we do on YouTube. They are not a part of it at all. And so, they'll ask me questions like, are you guys having problems with somebody? Like, have you just noticed that? Like, it's been almost 2 years of this. And they're like, oh, wow, I didn't know. Because you're only on the podcast. Thank you to all the people that donated, and thank you to the cheapskates that didn't donate. You'll have a special place in my heart. Joking. I'm kidding, folks. Thank you to everybody who donated, especially that big donation. I want to thank that person again. Posh Lady 43. Thank you for that. You really came through.
Very generous of you.
Yep. Because, it's nearing the end of the month and, we got to pay the bills, man, to keep this show going. We got to pay the rent here at this place. It ain't cheap, man. But Lisa Marie says, love the shows, especially on Friday. If you guys are in the chat right now, if you like Fridays, tell me right now you like Fridays. Otherwise, probably next month I'm going to kill it. But if you want me to keep doing Fridays, let me know. Because Fridays, we don't get as big a crowd. It's like 400 or 500 people. Somebody says, yes. And Lauren says, I'm broke as I hear you, bro. Me too. Yes. Love it. Fridays. I love Fridays. Quite a few people saying they like it. Because there's a lot of people who don't show up on Friday. But here's the thing about Fridays, though. We do get a pretty big replay gang on there. The replay gang comes on, and they do watch it. And the Friday episodes tend to pretty much, pan out. You just don't get as many people in the chat. So I'm thinking maybe people can't show up, on Friday. Oh, thank you, Julie. She says, I would watch your show every night. Oh, Paul says, I'm a boring person, so I like Friday. The Scorpion says here, thank y'all for giving us your time. Thank y'all for donating. Thank y'all for hitting the like button. Let's spread the word and continue to win because we're all winners here at PRT. Yes, we are. We win. We kick ass here at PRT. We just kick ass. That's all it is.
If you want to be a double winner, hit the like button if you haven't already.
So remember, it's Friday Night Friday. So we are going to be on this Friday for sure. But I can't guarantee you beyond that. And then, of course, Supernatural Sunday. That's the big show. Monday is Macabre Monday, where we get everybody calling in. Terrifying Tuesday. We got the podcast episode, the 1 hour. Those are always pretty good bangers. And then Wednesday, Weirdness Wednesday. Here it is, right here. And so, thank you guys. We're gonna head out. We're gonna leave. I got to go to work. I had a good conversation with the manager at the complex where the guy tried to throw water on me. And get this. So apparently this is a thing, Anthony. I'm not even know if you know this or not, but people put LSD in water and throw it on people.
Oh, that's great.
So it makes you trip.
Wow. And
if you got high blood pressure, you're just screwed. So I don't know if that guy, remember he tried to do that.
Yeah.
I don't know if he had something in the water because he thought it was cute. And I backed up. I have cat-like reflexes. I actually do. Like, I'm Anthony. Am I lying?
No.
Well, he just says, nah.
What
He doesn't say anything to back it up. He just says, nah. He doesn't say, I've seen you move with agility. He just says, no, you're good.
You're in the middle of a story.
No, I'm not. I just said I had cat-like reflexes. The guy threw water at me. I moved. But no, he tried to throw water on me. And so apparently there's a couple friends of mine that are police officers. And I was like, dude, what is this? And the guy was like, hey, it's happening downtown. There are people who will put like hallucinogens into water and they'll throw it on people or douse them with it. And then and it's like hundreds of hits. Like that's and they'll sell it. But they'll put it on people. They'll dose them. They'll put like a little bit in their drink or whatever. So I'm not saying this is what he was trying to do, but he was trying to get water on me. So I moved. I didn't get wet, but imagine if I would have, and just hypothetically, what if that's what that was? So I told my friend, I was like, "You're just trying to scare me because you're a freaking cop. I knew it. You're just a piece of shit." Frank's like, "No, I mean, some other name." He's like, I already said it, but he says, no, dude, I'm not bullshitting. I'm like, because I asked him, I was like, I didn't talk to him like that, but I was like, are you serious? I've known him since high school. I went to high school with Travis. And he's like, no, I'm serious. He's like, because where he's at is down in Houston. But he said, dude, they're doing it in Austin too. So one of my friends works here, downtown, former corrections. He said that was a very common thing in jail. They throw stuff on people, and they make you fry balls, It's like, yeah. And then, of course, people will put urine and everything else. And he tried to throw it on me. And then I ended up smacking the bottle and it went into his eyes. So if it was he's still out in the woods now going, woo,
Yeah.
woo. So
Yeah,
I
he's
talked to
checked
them.
out off this planet.
Yeah.
I mean, he's here, but he's not here.
Yeah. And I talked to the manager of the other complex where the lady was like calling Tony a little boy.
Mm-hmm.
She called him what'd she call him? What'd she say? Her exact words.
Some young boy.
Some young boy or something,
Yeah.
a little boy. No, what she call, a
teenage
small boy. Small
Yeah,
boy.
small boy.
She's like a small disheveled boy. She called Tony. Tony, he's sitting in the back seat of the truck with his phone, and she probably like, what is this little boy back there?
Yeah.
You know, is this man kidnapping you, child? What are you doing back there, boy? And she's like, you need to have a uniform. I was like, yes, we do.
Looks like a case of human trafficking.
And Tony's back there like, I am wearing my uniform. And she's like, yeah, prove it. And she's over there like, but she was over there like, old scratching.
Yeah.
Hey, you know.
I know he bought you from the flea market.
Did you kidnap this little Vietnamese boy? Like, well, he don't look Vietnamese though. He looks like he's, you know, from Filipino or something.
I know you bought him from the Mexicans.
She was so she writes a 2-page essay.
Yeah.
And you know what's funny? Like, you're brown, Tony's brown, you know.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, I don't know what I look like. I guess like the Wish version of Alex Jones or something. I don't know. I got that from somebody who doesn't like me. They're like, he's the Wish version of Alex Jones. I'm like, I'd rather be the knockoff version of Alex Jones than whatever the hell you are. And I know Alex. He's not. I'm not him. Believe me. I used to have a show right around the same time, like when he was doing his back in the '90s. Well, I say that it was my friends, but I was always on it, so we got to know him, you know. But we're like best friends or anything. And so this person writes a 2-page essay. She calls us good old boys. She says they're good old boys, and we're out there harassing minorities. This is what she says.
Yeah.
Right? Just the good old boys looking for dark people. You better watch out, because if I see you, it's on. And I put the hood on, you know. I'm
It's
like,
always like angry white women that are speaking on our behalf. Like,
this is what she was, too.
we didn't elect you to be our mascot. We didn't like have a meeting of the black and brown people and decide we want all the angry white
to watch our back.
Yeah, well, we want all the angry white women with daddy issues to speak on our behalf. Like, none of us asked for that. We didn't elect you to that position.
There was no vote. It was taken. Shadow Fury has something. He says, question any sitting, or I guess you're saying sighting of werewolf or vampire in SoCal. Yeah, you damn well better believe it. James Bartley had a whole thing about vampires and reptilians down in Southern California. There is a whole lot of vampires down there. I'm not joking. And when they made that movie, The Lost Boys, it was pretty much self-disclosure. That was a make-believe city, but it was supposed to be the Pier, Santa Monica. I could give you a whole show just on the Southern Cal vampire cult. There's a whole big one down there. Werewolves, yeah, they're all over the place. The deserts up there, kind of where Nellie's from, and that's where she had her encounter with her sister. But I mean, that is a whole, and that's how I met Nellie, because I retold her story on Dogman Encounters. And she was one of my witnesses, and I got to meet a lot of cool people. Some of the people that I told their stories for on Dogman Encounters have come back and had other encounters too, because like I said before, if you've seen this thing once, you may see it again, you know? So I've had several people reach out, like, you know, and tell me, hey, I've had more, you know, and we redid Clint's encounter from the logging camp. Several people have been petitioning me to try to go back and retell the stories that I've told on that show. For PRTs, because there's like people, hey, bring it home to PRT, whatever. If the people whose stories, because they're not my stories, but if the people who gave me those stories, a couple of them are deceased now. The couple from Taylor, Mississippi, that area of Taylor, Mississippi, that told me that, they're gone. They're no longer around. But their granddaughter is, and she was talking about the activity continuing. There was a werewolf type creature that had a little dog that was hanging around with it. I'm not even joking. It's crazy stuff. But anyway, if they choose to tell me, you know, then I'll consider it. You know, but they're not coming out and saying, hey, So, you know, I'm not going to run out and go, oh, you know what? I need to bring it back here, you know. Yeah, somebody's saying that about Tony Merkel's show. Yeah, I'd love to, you know. But I don't know, you know. We'll see. So anyway, thank you guys to everybody who donated. Some people donated late, like T Toey. Thank you. She says, I love Fridays and your hat. My hat, thank you. Paula King, she's awesome too. Everybody, Bradley Humphrey says King Nebuchadnezzar turned into a beast in the Bible, the judgment from God. Yes, that's in the Bible. That is in the Bible. Everybody who helped out, you know, just love you guys. We're gonna try and mail off. We didn't get to mail today because the weather was weird. It was like we knew it was gonna storm, so we were kind of waiting, and we didn't want to get caught because it was gonna hail. And then finally they sent a message saying, well, it's gonna hail, it's gonna be like 6 o'clock or something, and we're just like, oh, if we'd have known, I guess they didn't know exactly how fast the storm was going or whatever, so we didn't know. So we stayed home waiting for this to happen. But lucky for us, I don't say lucky, I think God helps us out. But everybody got to work safely, and then it hit right after everybody got to work. That in and of itself is a blessing. Tony didn't have to drive in it. Scorp, D, Maddie, none of them had to drive in it, or Clark or any of our people had to drive in it. They all got to work safely, and then it just went boom, you know. So yeah, that's a blessing in and of itself. So we're gonna try and mail off. If we can't get it tomorrow, it's probably gonna have to be the early next week. So if you have the Patreon and you got stuff where you're ready to go, just be patient. Now, I do need you to go to, if you're a Patreon member and you want one of these tumblers, we're gonna go through and get everybody's information. We got 50 of them to give away. Okay. Giveaways at prtpodcast.com. Give us your information. Say, I need my tumbler. If you're a $50, $40, or $30 tier, once those people are taken care of, then the $20 and $10 tier, we'll give what's left. We can give it to you. So probably the 22 or 20 will also be there, and then it'll go down from there. And if you're an admin, if you're a moderator for the show, like this guy, Randy, you will get a tumbler. Not you, Maddie. You get out of here. You know, T-Toey, another person, you get a tumbler. So if you're a moderator, you get one. I don't know. Is Dick Richards a moderator? Yes, he is. Yeah, Dick Richards is another one. I got to mail it to freaking
Canada.
It took her years. It took her years.
Thanks a lot, Dick.
God. But we'll do it. All right, man. I'm out of here, guys. We love you. We nub new that buckwheat. All right, later, guys. Playing.
What?
Well, I'm going to play it, but it's not what it is.